Oh, I forgot uh, audio. Hello, friends, enemies, kind mothers. Oh, I forgot about strangers. Okay, friends, enemies, and everyone in between. That would include strangers, I suppose. And kind mothers. Let's see. Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Hello,
Good morning.
friends.
Good morning, Hyro.
Morning, friend, enemy, and kind mother. No, friend, enemy, stranger, and kind mother. Hmm.
I will reject the enemy title today. I can be your enemy a different day.
Okay, then I will too. Thank you.
Good. Then we could just be
I will
friends.
choose friend over enemy and stranger.
Yes, me too.
Everyone is my kind mother.
Hmm.
Why do I say that, kind mother? Actually, I have my biological mother next to me in this room
Oh,
in the hospital. And no, I'm not sick, but my mother is sick. She, she, oh, she got COVID, so I better cover my mouth. Yeah, with a N95 mask.
oh,
There she is.
oh, there she is.
Yes.
Oh, good
Hola,
morning, Mom.
salude. ¿Quién es? Eh, doña, don, doña qué? Sí, dígale hola. Ah, dígale, salude. Hola. Sí. Ah, sí, sí. Es-
Oh, thank you.
she's only, she's only 100 years old.
That's so awesome. 100. Wow.
This is like a lot.
I feel like she's experienced more than I will ever experience.
Hmm.
That's awesome.
But what is experience?
Yeah. What is experience?
What if we've all experienced the same amount? What if we've all been souls that have existed for since beginningless time? So we're equally old
What if? It's possible. I think it's possible.
because it is written or it was spoken by a wise sage. Every action arising from desire, aversion, and ignorance produces suffering. Every action arising from the absence of desire, aversion, and ignorance produces happiness. So there are three kinds of people determined according to their capacities, from the
Hmm.
lowest to the highest, and those in between. Like all other beings, the lowest person wants happiness and wants neither suffering nor rebirth in the lower realms of existence. So they practice something spiritual to create the causes of a rebirth in the human realm or in the heavenly realms of the gods and goddesses. They do
Interesting.
not have the power or courage to leave worldly existence completely. They're still stuck in wanting the desire realm. They want only the best parts of the worldly existence and avoid the worst parts. And so they practice whatever it takes to get a higher rebirth, as compared to a lower rebirth would be animal, and even lower, there might be more lower than that. Now there's another person that says, I'm tired of this rebirth game. I want out of it. And so they practice to get out of it altogether and attain nirvana, the state of entirely gone from suffering. And then there's another one even higher than that, a person that I want to end suffering for all living beings. And so they practice to become an enlightened being. And so they will have the power and energy to uh, to bring everyone to mm, to freedom from this suffering. Remove all suffering of all beings. Oh, so if we treat everyone like our kind mother, because if it takes being born, then it takes a mother to have us be born. So we've been each other's mother in a previous life. Oh, and now we have another kind mother to show up. It's Jorge Hernandez.
Oh,
Let's see. Yes, Jorge Hernandez.
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning, Dan. Good morning, Sensei Jairo.
Jorge
good
Hernandez
morning, Jorge.
resides in Houston, Texas. So
Oh,
he had to get up extra early.
Born and raised in Acapulco, Mexico, but I have more than 20 years living in the United States. So yes, that I am.
Wow. He was born and raised in Acapulco.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He was jumping off the cliffs.
Yes, La Quebrada. That's the name of that place that you're saying, Jairo. We call him La Quebrada, where they jump, they dive.
Why do they call it La Quebrada? Because when they jump, they quebra la cabeza. They break their heads.
Pretty much. Hi, Dan. Where are you from?
I'm in Florida. I'm in Central Florida.
Yeah, you like oranges.
I do. I haven't had, I don't know. I don't think I've had any Florida oranges since I've been here. I think they came from Mexico.
Yeah, but
Wow.
Florida is pretty known because they grow their own oranges, right? They
That's
have
what I
fields.
thought. Yeah.
Yes, Don lives in Citrus County, correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Citrus
you see?
County.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
talking
but there's
about.
no oranges growing here.
They ate them all.
Wow. Wow. Well, nice to meet you, Dan.
I better
Jairo,
put my mask on.
what is the topic of the for today's?
I will show you my my mother. She's in the hospital for COVID-19. But she's getting better and she'll leave anytime.
Yes, I agree. Hola, ¿cómo está? Ya, ya, ya necesita pararse de ahí.
Déjame ver el otro.
Qué bien, Jairo, qué bien. Se mira mejor. ¿Cuándo se van a parar de esa cama?
¿Cuándo te vas a parar de la cama?
Déjala que descanse, Jairo. It's
Uy,
okay.
uy, uy. There.
And she's
There.
100 years old. That's
She's
awesome.
100 years old.
Yes.
And she bore me.
And
And
she
she had me in her belly for 9 or so months. And then I popped out September 17, 1959.
Wow. Does she have any special diet?
She was
I want to
47
last that
years old.
long.
Yes. He was Jairo. Does she have any special diets that made
Mm,
her live so long?
I'll investigate. Mm, I seen her eat, or she used to eat. When she ate chicken, she would like the bones. She would break them and suck the marrow out of them.
Ah,
But now she doesn't do that.
yeah.
So
But she,
Dan, what do you think about those people that last more than 80 or 90 and go to the 100 years? What do you think about it?
I think it has to do with the state of mind.
Hmm.
oh,
I don't think it has, I think it does have some things to do with food and caring for the body, but I believe that many people are trapped in their own story of what they
Hmm.
believe works, and they confuse it. And therefore, that's why you have the conflict. You have the conflict of people who are supposedly living this healthy, clean life, whether they are runners or very active, and they still die young. With, people can't explain why. And then
Hmm.
you have vegans, vegetarians that's been saying this is the way to go for years. But I haven't seen anyone telling me, oh yeah, vegans, vegetarians live longer than people who eat meat. Where are they? And finally, I'll say to substantiate my point is that I listen, or I have followed a guy for several years now, and I think he's called the Raw Health Show or Raw Health Diet. And from the very first time I saw him, I thought this was an old man, maybe 60s, 70s. I was shocked to discover that I believe he was in his 40s. I'm 50. He looks so old. And he said
Wow.
that he had been living a raw vegetarian or vegan diet for many, many years. I'm not criticizing, but what I'm saying is what we perceive with our eyes doesn't match necessarily reality and what's really going on. And so it's difficult to discern.
Wow. Yeah, I feel so good just by listening to you that I share your belief system. I think the same, that sometimes it's our own perceptions, the way we see life, that affect most than the things we eat in this case, could be a diet in
mhm.
vegetables or meat or whatever. But the state of mind, I think that's what is more important, what we think. Yeah. Thank you,
I
Dan.
agree. Thank you.
Now I'm thinking clearly, like Jairo. I woke up and just listening to you. Wow, it's worth it. Because I'm 1 hour behind you guys. So yeah, see, 6 a.m. here in
Yeah.
Houston.
Yeah.
You are
Oh,
7, right? You're
yes.
7.
Yes.
Hi, Peter.
Hi,
Hello,
Peter.
good morning. How are you guys doing? I haven't been on for a long time.
Good morning. I'm new. I don't remember, Jairo. How many weeks have I been joining you guys? Just 4 weeks now, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah. They haven't
Yeah,
kicked me out yet.
Oh,
this is the this
oh,
is
how
the
are you
this
sick,
is
Harold?
the dawn of the age of of
Mhm.
waking up. And thinking clearly.
I
Thinking
agree.
clearly, thinking clearly.
I'm
Yeah.
in the hospital.
No, Hiram's visiting his 100-year-old mother, Peter, and she's
Yeah.
sick with COVID. So he's there wearing a mask for her.
100 years old. Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
I know.
I
She
see.
talked to
Mhm.
you, Jorge.
Yes.
Don, we're halfway there.
Yes.
Oh,
Hi, Mama. Hi, Mama.
yeah. Mm. Don. Se
Yes.
llama Don.
Don,
Hi,
¿cómo
Mama.
estás?
Salude, salude. Salude.
Ya levántese de ahí.
Levántese. Muy bueno. Que tienes muchas tareas que hacer. Es
Mhm.
que limpiar el patio y echarle agua a las matas que se están muriendo.
Dile, Jairo, lo que dijo Jesús, levántate y anda.
Ay,
I just realized this thing's being streamed.
Yes.
Porque se nos vamos ya. Oh, no,
Sí.
no, don't get up.
Oh, she
No,
was going to
todavía
get up.
no. No, no, no.
Maybe she'll participate and tell us the truth about life.
Descanse, descanse.
Sí.
Ya viene el desayuno. Ya te traen
Yeah.
el desayuno.
Tell her to take, don't get up. So what you were saying, Peter? I couldn't hear you. Sorry.
I was gonna say hi. What you guys
Mm.
talking about?
Well, I don't know. Jairo, what's the topic for today?
The topic.
Yeah, you always have
was-
like a title. We're gonna talk about this, but I don't know.
Should we talk about philosophy?
I
Yes.
was,
We
I
can
was
choose.
wondering. I was wondering about.
I have a
Uh,
topic if
the-
I can say it. I don't know if I can.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
It's been a long time since I've been to this group, but is this more like an open topic group or is it more just philosophy only?
You can
Open
choose the topic you
Okay.
want.
Okay. I want to talk about something that I've been itching to talk about with other people besides my own friend, because I think I need to talk to more people in general. But
Mhm.
I hope this makes sense because it's not something that we think about every day. But it's not too deep either. It's something I want to talk about. What makes a person have certain moral roots? And that is something I want to talk about.
Mm.
And I think why is this interesting? And do everyone know what this means, right? Because you all know that I'm not going to explain it, right? Moral roots. So basically, like where the root of your morals are. Okay. Anyways, why do I think it's important? Because I think this is my speculation analysis of social science and studying people for many years, and some biology as well. I think this is at the bottom of almost everything that makes us human, individually and collectively. And and when you think about the most heated political topics, they all stem from individual moral roots. Because if you are someone who, now when I say intrinsically, I don't mean you're born with it because you're born knowing nothing. I think that's pretty obvious. You're only born as a baby knowing how to cry because you must get your parents' attention to take care of you or else you will die. But later in life, you start learning stuff from people around you in all circles. And then sometimes we call it free will, or you develop your own, you develop your own choices, the ability to make your own choices, to tell you like, this is what a person tell themselves. I'd rather choose this over this because of this reason. And through this, journey of a person's life, their moral roots start developing more and more and deeper. And I want to talk about this because I think, first of all, it's interesting. And secondly, I think just perhaps, not 100%, because nothing is that guaranteed, but I think it's just perhaps that I think this is how people can understand other people a bit better without being too much frustrated and with a lot of anger. I hope that makes sense. So instead of looking at someone with a completely different political view on a subject than yourself and say, you are such an evil person, how can you think that? Maybe dig down and to see if you can get to the other person's moral roots and then have a better understanding. If you want me to go more specific, I can go more specific, but
No,
if you want me to end here, I can end here, you know.
No. Keep, we're gonna keep. Well, for me, you have a interesting topic, but for me, I would like to take it just little by little because you start in point A and now you're going all the way down to C. So if we take it step by step, the first thing you said that okay, it was for me is that depend in what place or part of the world you were born. In my case, I was born and raised in Mexico, and the culture is different. So I learned, like you said, everything around me, the environment, it was so different. I came to this country and start taking those pills out of myself and start changing my way of thinking, political, about religion, spiritual, everything. So if we take it little by little, we can. It is a really good, interesting topic that you're talking about. But I would like it to talk about it just one topic step by step, because if we keep jumping like that, I mean, we're not gonna go. We we're gonna get lost in the conversation. So
Yeah.
the first thing that you said, it was well, everything that you said you were talking is really interesting for me. I don't know Dan or Jairo, but yeah, I like it, Peter. I like it very much. But do you want to start from the beginning? And maybe Dan can help us a little bit, or Jairo?
Okay, so from the beginning. I guess more, let's start with how we form moral roots. Okay, because I'm not going to define it because
That's one. That's a
yeah,
good step.
because we're obviously born first knowing nothing and then eventually it comes to us. So if anyone is willing to share the personal experience of, you know, your own moral roots, have to do, like for me, so I'll use myself as an example because I don't know anyone else. I grew up being told certain things by my parents, and then told other things by my teachers, told other things by my friends. And then as I grew up a little bit more, now going to the double-digit age, like 10 and above, and then now told other things, other perspectives by the news. And much older, I got to social media, and I had a lot of different opinions about, you know, different events around the world. So essentially, essentially what I mean is this is how we gradually form different opinions from different perspectives from different platforms. And over the years and decades, I have chosen to, it's hard for me to define this point because I really don't know how to explain it logically or scientifically because I can't, but I have chosen the certain perspectives that I think make sense for me and that I agree with, and I've stuck with it very strongly, and they have since become my, what I called moral roots. So what about you guys?
Okay, Dan, your turn.
So I feel like what I experience in my world is that we are embedded with a programming, so to speak, from our birth. And that programming consists of experiences in our environment that helps to form our everything. So morals are relative, which is why one person's morals may be different from another's. But there seems to be another force, power within us that can change our directions. For example, I have siblings. We were all raised in the same home with our mother, but we are all different. We all have completely different morals. So, like Peter said, at some point, he, after gathering all of this experience, he decided what path he was going to go. He redesigned his programming from what he had as a child and decided that this is the path he's going to follow. This is the belief systems he's going to envelop within himself. And so I believe what is moral is very difficult to define because it's relative to each one of us. And how can you say to one that his beliefs are immoral, but ours are moral? It's very difficult, although we do it all the time. But like you said, Jorge, this is a deep topic. It's difficult to, chew it all at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I just want to say really quickly, Don, I think what you alluded to is I'm not obviously talking about it now because other people haven't shared, but what you alluded to is something called moral high ground. Moral high ground, we do this individually to another individual, but what's even more, you could say damaging or beneficial, depending how it happens, is when an entire nation go against another nation, saying our morals are better than yours, and you have imperialism and colonialism and all that.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I like it. Dominic, good morning. How are you, Dominic? Long time no see you.
Hey guys, good morning.
Do you want to jump into the conversation? We're talking about how do we create morals and rules since we were born?
No, not moral rules, roots, ROOT.
Okay. My bad.
Right, so the roots of our morals, where do they come from? How do we form it?
Okay.
Well, I guess we can, this goes back. Usually morals come from a lack of discernment. So where do they come from? Who gives us the position of thinking of what is right and wrong? That's usually the foundation of morals. Somewhere along the line, we've been told or taught or observed what right and wrong is. Without wisdom in there, it usually goes array. Right and wrong is usually, for me anyway, guys, is a very pious position to be in. Who's to say what is right or wrong? Again, discernment would have to play a role in there, saying, okay, so is my religion right and theirs is wrong? Is my view on state right? Regardless of if we were born with, in the womb, picking up the energy from our parents or from our communities, it's still our responsibility, hopefully, to at least question it. Like I've always told Jaro jokingly, change the word wrong to left, right and left, opposed to right and wrong. Now you have directions, But I get, we can philosophize the whys they came to be. In this case, I think I heard Peter, the roots. We didn't create them. So that's one of the roots. But since it's in play, it's each person's responsibility to think, is it right to pick up a gun? You can even get to the point who made the gun. But at that point, who is it right to kill another human being? Then you can go inwards and say, would I want the effects of what a gun can and cannot do to me? Put fear in me, remove me. Then I wouldn't have no other issues to deal with if I was removed. So anyway, I just put a little.
You might even have to sometimes examine the science of violence, but that's a different story.
There's right and wrong in that too, Pete. In that particular case, everything could be broken down, but once again, usually right and wrong is usually ourself, our ego, that's playing a role there. Because even that, then you can question what is the ego. But in that case, again, what is right and wrong, and from whose position? If I'm running the economics of the world, I'm a trillionaire, it's business as usual. But from everybody else's position, that probably doesn't, it affects them in other ways. They could turn around and say it's wrong. That's just the position. But then discernment, then you could break it down. why do I perceive something in that moment is right? Discernment, wisdom. That's what that's all about. Most people never strive for that kind of stuff. And then you have to have that concept of understand. Understand is for oneself. The word gives away. You have to know yourself well enough. Hence the terminology of know thyself, whatever that is to you. So anyway, I went on.
Dominic,
Would it be accurate to say, Dominic, that moral roots, actually, you know what, I just used the word morals in general, would it be accurate to say morals in general is predicated on subjectivity?
You're tapping into Pete, when people talk about a subjective, objective, you can't see the words you explain, so that's subjective. Like literally, when you say everything you look around you, you describe it, that's subjective. So the word morality, it comes from the root morality. It's subjective, yes. And of course, we're using an English language, so there's many meanings. So anyway, I've heard. Sorry, go ahead. Right, Jor, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I was interested in that, Peter, and you were talking about this when a person go and pick up a gun or a rifle and kill another person. In this case, this guy is not being conscious, is being programmed to do something regardless that he don't want to do it, or what's going on there? What is happening?
The context matters too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of
because there's a difference between, you know, a mass killer like Ted Bundy. I don't know how many people knows this name.
Yeah, if
you don't know this name, you're really not missing out much. He's someone who killed a lot of people, especially women. So anyways, it's a mass killer. That's what he is. And then, so he kills, but also there are people who kill in unfortunate situations called self-defense with no other choices. Yes, both of them you're killing, a human killing a human. But, you know, I think ethically, morally, and legally, they're both different.
Once again, we in Estate Pete, we brought in different words like who makes the rules and laws. Bundy was more like a sociopath, psychopath. That's just a person that's not developed emotionally. We use justifications to do this concept called defense and attack. The observer might say, okay, so as a childlike or somebody that just has discernment would say, so how does this affect us later on? Like we have so many side effects to why a person picks up a gun. More times than not, it's usually people that are underdeveloped emotionally. I'm defending my country. I'm defending my family. I'm defending my community. Well, there's the defense part. You know, and if people understood what karma is anything that's participating in there. So if a person is trying to kill you, you're doing everything in your power to avoid harming yourself and them. Now, in a lot of cases, like you're saying about Bundy, those things happen. We regularly drive a car that we can cause havoc to other people. But then somebody will say, okay, but Bundy's a different situation. Those are just our variations of justification or excusing our behaviors. I'm not saying I would go out of my way to harm another human being, not knowingly, but unknowingly. If I worked for an industry that created a gun or cloning food, that could harm individual people.
Oh, you're going to say something?
I have a memory of when I learned something that I kind of file it under moral guidance. So when I was around 5 or so years old, or maybe it was earlier. Now I can't be sure. No, I think it was 5, and I think it was in Coral Gables, or maybe it was earlier than that. Maybe it was 4 in Colombia, Bogota. Now my memory is so vague. It's even weaker than a dream. but I remember getting scolded by my father, my kind father, who took me back to where I picked up a toy in a yard. I found a bright shiny toy. Like like
My name is Caitlin.
oh, good morning. I'm in Zoom land. So I was so my father had me take the toy back to where it belonged. So I learned about not taking what belongs to me. Everything seems to belong to everyone else. And from then I felt poor and underprivileged. No, I got some things. With patience, I would be given gifts, maybe once a year on December 24th in the evening. No. So I guess that would be an example of a moral root. Like where does the moral rules come from? Events like that, little events like that, they add up.
I need to check your blood pressure.
Hmm. Maybe it's like little things that we're supposed to do
You're
to
for
to live with others. Maybe. What about like strict rules, like wearing a mask?
for me, you know, for many years, I've been, this might sound crazy for some people, but I've actually spent years of my life in searching of the absolute objective moral that I believe every human being in the world could agree on. And after searching for almost 10 years, I came to the conclusion that actually is not possible. So I have to say, I'm glad that I did not waste my life, because I actually went through the process of actually trying to go through this investigation. And the reason that's why I was hinting earlier, why I think all morality is subjective, because even if you can have many people agree on something, if you ask enough people in the world, you will find someone who will disagree with it.
If I can share, Pete, again, people play this game of subjective, objective, yin and yang kind of game. We have so many variations of language. So anything that's subjective would be spoken. Objective, okay, you're going with the objective. Through observation, people would come to the simple observation that things are different, but yet at the same time look very similar. You know, you can look at all the different trees in plain sight and make a quick assumption that they're all the same. But then if you look a little bit more with a discerning eye, you'd realize there's a lot of difference with each one. The fact that we have morals, right and wrongs, is why we have so many variations of religions, state. To think, one would think outside that everything's going to be very similar. They've avoided looking within. We have things set up as a kingdom within. You know, your hemispheres are king and queen. Your heart is your gesture. You have many receivers from within. I don't know about yourself, Pete, but if you ever had that observation that you might be the few as the exception, have you ever been outside of that vessel? And most people, if they're honest with themselves, forget about truth, honest, would say no. I said, so then you're looking from a point of view, and you're also looking from the eye of the beholder. That's all within you. The rest of it is the illusion, the play. When you look across the room, you're not there. You're still here. So I heard you say a word. You thought that everybody, I think you said, think alike or agree.
So here's one example
Yes,
that I
please.
want to give. So it's so I don't sound too vague and confuse people all the time. So for example, I hope most people here would agree with this moral. Even if you are not, please don't incriminate yourself by speaking up. So I would hope that many people will say killing another human being for the sake of pleasure is a good thing. I would like to think that most people probably in the world will think that's a bad thing. But you will find people that will think there's nothing wrong with it. So it's kind of scary, but that is the world we live in, where we don't have any truly objective moral roots where everyone can agree on, even if we think is so fundamentally right.
Well, Pete, I'm going to have something I usually have discussion with certain people. If
I
I
hope
look
that
at,
makes sense.
well, the only person it should make sense to is the one that actually is the student, would be you. So in this particular case, if I'm looking at an object and I call it the sun, could you agree or disagree from my senses? If you're honest, you would say, well, Dominic, I don't see it through your senses. The whole ideal of agreeing and disagreeing is another condition. If you're being honest with oneself. Now, when we use words like killing a human being, most people publicly would probably say no. There's a difference between public and private conversation. Now, if we're talking about not people, but killing, then we would have issues. We would have to have conversations with species like animals. And there's a lot of people out there that do kill animals. And we use justifications such as I need the food and all that. I say, okay, well, do you do an honorable killing? Do you put somebody to sleep and all this? This is where we play this game where we're trying to fit everybody in the same situation. When a person goes within and say, well, I couldn't tell you one way or another. There is a possibility, maybe there is something out there that we can all agree upon, if there's such thing that we can agree upon, such as we look up in the sky and we see an object and we call it the sun. But do we see it from each other person's view? Probably not. And then we would have to ask how many thousands of languages are that we can make the same description of that object in the sky, hence subjective. You know, it's not about, not to put you on the spot there, Peter, it's not about a 10-year journey. You live many lifespans. People that are 80 years old don't even have discernment that the words that you speak aren't seen. The thoughts that you receive, hence the word Kabbalah, isn't seen. That's an inquiry. That's an inquiry.
The reason I mentioned the 10 years kind of on and off thing to try to discover this, because I know that most people wouldn't even spend a single day doing this. So I would like to just essentially, I was patting myself on the back for saying that I have made more effort than what your average person would do about this particular subject.
Could be. And then there's other associations. There's people that have done 10 years of being a mother or 10 years of doing this. I get your ego was out there for a minute there, Peter, having fun, which is fine. But that's where you go with agreeing. The only person you're ever going to understand is the student, which is you. Now, if you think the teacher's outside, my question I usually tell people is, who taught you how to breathe? Wasn't your parents, wasn't your mother, I'm sorry, it's the same person, wasn't your loved ones, which could be your wife or your kids. So then who's your teacher? It's not outside. Now, I'm going with the idea that maybe we receive things like we're this high-tech computer that's more advanced than the laptop or iPhone will ever be, but we've never worked collectively, so we wouldn't really understood or understand how does Siri work if we've never worked collectively. But what we do see is maybe 100 million people going to war, maybe thousands of people being butchers, maybe 100 people, doing smash up derby in a car race. We all have our choices. It's just when we say things like we don't have any choices, that's an excuse, because if we didn't have no choice, then we wouldn't have morality. We wouldn't have right or wrong. That's an inquiry. I'm just wrapping up.
A kind of an interesting question I always ask myself, because I don't ask people usually because A, they don't care, and B, is I think they might think I'm a crazy person. But I ask myself this question, for many, many times, and I really don't know the answer. But you guys don't have to answer this as well. I just want to say this so you guys know what I've been asking myself for years. It's if everyone in the world could get along in the sense that we all agree on everything and have a unified objective to do everything, which I know sounds crazy and never happens, but would that really be objectively a better world? I'm not so sure.
Well, you're
But,
asking,
but-
questions, Pete,
Yeah,
world.
I'm not asking
Change-
you guys. It was just me as putting out there so you know what's been going through my own mind.
Anytime somebody says the word sun, you're going to receive and you're going to make a description. Sorry, go ahead, Don.
Don, yeah.
I was just going to say that what's right and wrong changes with our collective consciousness. So at one point, it was not wrong in our world to, at least in America, let's just talk about America to keep it very concise. At one point, it was not wrong to hunt and kill a Black person. Okay, for the society, it was not wrong. That's why it's relative to each individual person. And the one constant here on this earth is change. And so, what I have experienced and from what I have learned from history is that as we go within, as we begin to see and know ourselves, our state of mind changes and it infects other people because as we change ourselves inside, within, as Dawn was saying, it reflects outside of us in our reality. So over time, change occurs. But what happens, what causes conflict is we forget our past. And so once we reach a certain state of consciousness and we change and criticize and judge others who are not seeing it from our perspective, instead of realizing that they are still stuck in an old paradigm, stuck in an old way of thinking, and have not evolved. And it's the yin and yang, the dark and light that we describe constantly. I am not saying that either position is right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a pattern, a process that continues to happen constantly on this earth. And Jorge, we never heard your position. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Is he still there?
Yes, I'm here. It's I like it. And I agree with all of you. And especially what you were saying about how we change our perspective change through the time with the experience. When I was young, when I was a kid, I used to think like a kid. When I was in my teenagers, I used to think like a teenagers. And when I was an adult, and now I'm in another time of my life, and I see different. Well, when I was a kid, if I saw something, it was right, that's okay. But now I see it, no, it's different. Now I see it in a different way. A good example could be an advice from my parents. And I didn't care when I was a teenager. I didn't care about those moral roots like Peter was saying or Dominic. Didn't care, but now it's different. Oh, now I see why they were telling me this. In that case, a moral root came from the first moral roots came from my parents. But I agree with Dominic that we have our own inner teacher. Now I see that. Now I can understand Dominic and Dan and Peter and Jairo. But if we were talking about this maybe 10 years, 15 years ago, I wouldn't understand. Even though I read too many books, I just wanted to change my way of living, but I didn't practice. I was reading. I was getting the knowledge, but I never put it into practice. And then a few years ago, when I started doing it, practicing, I heard so many times Dominic saying that hey, the books they're not worth it. Now I understand. Yes, because I thought by reading a book I'm gonna become a better person. No, it doesn't help. You can read a lot of books, but they're not gonna help you until you put it into practice. And I can see that in those are stages. I used to think like Peter oh, what about these morals, people killing each other? And when I was younger, I used to think like that, but now I see it different. I can understand uh, every point of view. Dominic, that's what I call him, my teacher, even that he gets mad and he said, I'm not your teacher, but I'm telling you, I'm projecting. I would just want to be like you. And just listening to Dawn, I can see her that she's in the path too. So I'm not alone here. You're not alone, Peter. Uh, we are here because there's no other place that we can talk about these topics. And you see, five in America, there's more than I believe 3 million 300 million people, and we are five in Canada. I don't know how many persons talk about this in Canada. I don't know how many people are in Canada.
35.
Dominic,
Mm.
35. Okay, sorry. How many people? How much is the percentage that people read books in United States? 1%, 10%? That's too much.
I don't know. There's no way of knowing it. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean, assuming most people go to school, they read a book. I mean, if you count that, then a lot of people read books.
But that's a kind of different of it's an academic education. It's not moral education. I remember those a quote from Nelson Mandela: "The most powerful weapon to change the world is education." But what kind of education? We don't find that education in a school. You're not gonna find it. Dominic, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, if you don't mind, Jaro.
Go ahead, Dominic.
Thank you, Jaro.
You got
Don.
you got 1 minute.
Oh, then
Just
I'm
kidding.
gonna speed talk. Oh, I'm okay with that. Don talked about it earlier. The word condition. The whole ideal of why we had slaveries or like weep or masters or whatever, that was conditioning. You're conditioned from young. And how do you reinforce it as your parents do it, whether they agree or don't agree with it? Think about Muslims, women, what they have to do. So as whoever's running the show, technology comes around, then they invented currency, federal notes. It became more easier for them. Now they're going to do something more easier. They're going to use digital currency. That's all conditioning. And as I'm hearing Jorge talk about it, reading books is conditioning. If you ponder, have you ever met a baby that knew how to read a book? No. If anything else, the only thing a baby knows how to do is how to make sound. And if we forget, sound is by far more superior than the oral speech, meaning all the different variations of language, colors, numbers, French, Spanish, Sanskrit, or written work. That's all conditioning. So if that's conditioning and we're in this program, I'm going to use the word program, then morals is a program too. Now you can test it, and how you test it, and Jorge, you talked about it, is applying it in practice. You can observe it by far more superior than actually practicing it. This is why when people talk about, some people have the ability, they can visualize playing a sport and becoming better. Then some people actually literally have to practice it over and over again, because most of us forgot there's something else running our vessel the whole time. Unless you're aware, as we're speaking with each other and hearing each other, who's running the blood in your body? When you're awake, who's running the body? When you're asleep, who's running the body? That is when the ego has to step aside long enough. This is why you have words like self-aware opposed to aware of the self. Know thyself, not self-knowledge, not self-love. It's loving the self. Or in some cases, and I think you guys have heard me talk, ripping a fucking new hole in it to know its place. Because our parents, no offense to them, they failed us miserably, and so has our community. How you know that? I don't have to see war to know that war exists. Now, for most people, it's in a form of entertainment, such as sports, where there's outcomes. Most of us have been taught 1 + 1 = 2. Most of us are stuck on 2. Dare not me tell you 100 - 98 gives you the same result, or 2 × 1 gives you the same result. What I'm hearing some of you guys talk about is maybe we can change the outcome by changing the questions. But most people, they're reactive. Now, I heard certain words coming from certain people. It's not the world. The world is beautiful with or without us. It's human issues. I know when we say things, but you got to be more clear with the ego, because the ego's kind of stupid more times than not. And it's including me in the fun, where no, trees are beautiful, sequoia trees, the bodies of water, they're all beautiful. If we're going to talk about the world, then you have to address and get the animals to start speaking. Then we have an issue. Oh, so you eat us for a living, do you? Where the fuck do you think about, talking about humanity and morality? Animals would have a problem with us. Now, some animals would turn around and say, yeah, but we're pets. Oh, so you're our master and we're your slave? Do you see the perpetual world of stage going on? Now, some people would say, oh, but certain types of people that are dark skinned, because I don't like using the word black because nobody's black. That's another morality game. We're either light skinned or dark skinned, depending on each moment. But we are all enslaved. We're doing it now. Jaro's wearing a mask. Why does he have to wear a mask in the hospital? Not because it's smoky in there, because we've been conditioned. Wear a mask, take a needle, do all of that. That's all conditioning. Now, not to take away certain needles, vaccines are healthy for certain types of people because their immune system can't build up. But most of those vaccines, same with pharmaceutical, are tested on healthy humans. So how does it work when it's on sick humans? Now we're playing Russian roulette. That's where you have discernment. But where morality gets caught up is right or wrong. Well, I have to take it. Why? Because the pack is taking it. So you're no longer thinking for the self. You're thinking for others, or you're worrying about being centered out. This is why I say I'm not nobody's teacher. I'm just a student, but the teacher comes from within. Anyway, I went on. Sorry,
I want to say, Dominic, it's a very good point because it's, I can't believe even till now we're in 2023. It's still a hot topic, but whatever, it's out of my control. But I still want to mention, because you mentioned this, Dominic, is the vaccine thing. It's, you either have people who believe on the one extreme end of the spectrum saying that we should get it no matter what to help the collective health, and you have other people who will say, no, I am so individualistic in my own personal freedom that I have no obligation to anyone else.
But the funny part is, Peter, those are the kind of people I talk to. I say, okay, next time you go into somebody else's car, jump in somebody and use somebody else's fuel and go to somebody else's grocery store, buy their food and all that. You're not, whose bitch are you? This is where people do not even have critical thinking. People have this game of playing flat earth versus round earth. I said, listen, let's do some simple observation. I'm going to take you out like a child. We're going to see two objects up in the sky. They both look round, right? Yes. Do you see everything here? Well, yeah. Do you see the land? Do you see the water? Do you see all that? Yes. Do you see anything down here up there? Well, no. So from a personal point of view, do you think it's either one? The person, if they're honest, would say, I couldn't confirm it one way or the other. Now, what most people will do is they'll say something about somebody else. Well, NASA said this. Oh, Socrates said that. They could be all lying to you. But from your own point of view, could you answer the question? COVID is all about economics. This is a 10-year project and we're in year 3. Now, how I know that, doesn't matter if I have wisdom and understanding, but I do know about it. It's because they've openly talked among themselves and they use their medias to describe it. Most people think, well, Dominic, I'm doing it because I don't want to get other people sick. How many people have gone to work when they're sick? Many people. So that's still a selfish act. They're doing it because they don't want to be centered out. I don't care if you're a Muslim, a Christian, democracy, communism, it's all the same game. They're using the disguise of morality to get people to adhere. But anyway, I went on again. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Jaro.
Charo, you are wearing your mask to protect your mother, yes?
Because my sister, she's strict in everything, and she's texting me through WhatsApp. So how's my mother and things like that. She's a micromanager, and so she and also the hospital is a rule that you have to wear the mask and wear a gown in here. And so when I came in the other day, look, I got my mask in my hand and a shield, and I'm gonna put them on. And no, you have to put that on outside the room and then come in. So that's what is that? Are these rules considered part of morality,
or when
Gerald,
is 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 is
what you're
is
saying is my
morality
biggest.
is morality something personal, like you say, subjective, or is it imposed on, or is it something that's absolute, that it's something in the air, that some something fabric of nature that arises and makes us one, because animals have a sense of or develop some kind of system, like a group of animals, they have pecking order and this and that, so that develops some kind of morality or some kind of uh behavior, that this is the way I'm supposed to act because these other are bigger than I am. So yeah, I would say that morality is more, maybe it doesn't even exist. Morality is more like, if it if we could imagine it, is more like how we're supposed to behave, more than like it's something that should be there independent of us. Mm. Oh, but
Gerald,
what?
the way I look at this is this: if you take away all the laws, and then how you personally would react, how you act in society with no laws. I hope this makes sense, but what I'm trying to say is, so let's say murder is now legal. Like, you guys know the movie Purge, right? The movie series Purge, just a bunch of government sanctioned killing once every year. It's fictional, of course, not real, thank goodness. But so let's say murder is legalized. You will have some people who will start killing people right away, and then you will have people who will not kill people even though it's legal. And I think the only reason why it's stopping some people from killing others, even if it's legal, is because of their own moral compass.
Mm.
Because think about it, now it's legal, and your moral compass says, yes, I'm going to kill someone. Then what's going to stop me? Nothing. I'm just going to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what in that case, sorry, Jared, what's gonna, I don't think stop it, it will justify, we make laws without understanding what the word law is really supposed to be about. It's not about man-made stuff. It's about light, air, wind, and space. It's about the boundaries around us. But most people are gonna say, you make a law, even when you're talking about the purge, that's conditioning. It's conditioning a society. It's like watching people that watch, say, porn or sports. Some of them will take it literally, that I have the right to do this to women or to men. But the observer will say, I don't want to participate in all that. But then you realize other people in other parts of the world or in the same part of the world are doing different kinds of games at the same time too. I got to drive a certain way. I got to stop here. The whole programming is, you got one hemisphere driving on one side of the road, you have another hemisphere driving on another side of the road. If you start thinking about how people read and write, it's the same ideal. We don't really understand, because we're waiting desperately that science, that it's a very dribbling little way of getting information, will tell us, well, that's how the hemispheres work. Then most people say, well, how does the moon and sun work? It's through observation. The observation is externally, but also internally. But we get fed information. Oh, well, I got to wear a mask because if I want to go see my mother in that particular, that's obedience. But you already have obedience. Why? Because Jarl had to drive a car. He probably had to follow all the rules of how to drive. That's all these things. You're the frog that's been in the water even before the womb. And I go on to the premise, guys, I wasn't even born in the womb. I have my own intelligence that I'm in. But whoever I am, I'm not the vessel. I'm not the thoughts. I'm experiencing those things. Now, can I get attached to those things? Yes. The major thing about suffering is your comforts. It's not about, I'm going to resist cutting my finger. That's one form of suffering. But really, where we suffer the most is all the comforts we have. That's what money brings to most people, comforts. So why would the digital be any different? The only difference is they first had to get a whole bunch of people for the last 10 or 15 years getting a phone in their hands. Look at the technology that we're on. They're not having AI that works together. It makes chess masters look like children. Now, somebody could turn around and say, Dominic, but are you a chess master? I said, if I don't worry about the outcome, I could play any chess master any time of the day, but I'm not worried about the outcome. This is where we think right and wrong, or up or down, the duality of life, yin and yang, positive and negative. But you can observe those things. And then you can even question those things if you choose to. If not, then what we're doing is I'm living in my own little world, which most people should come to that awareness if their parents didn't fail them, and then say, okay, so what do I want to do with those things? If I want to do anything opposed to this being, then you can say, okay, I'm going to become an electrician. I'm going to become a plumber. I'm going to be a parent. Those are all conditionings. It's been laid out for you. Now, how you do it in your own little increments, that's up to you. But to think that everybody, and Peter, if I may say so, you say a word without really observing it. Can we all agree? There's nowhere you can agree upon anything. You can have your own view on things. You're in your own cave. But when we say these words and other people are literally hearing you and listening from within, they catch those phrases. So when people listen to reset, pandemic in Greek, if you understand different languages and its tonality, means all people. They're telling among themselves. Now you can get into all these different clubs in the world. We're all in clubs. It's just that some clubs rule over other clubs. That's all. They don't own them, they rule it. How many people can truly say that they own their body? Well, then if you own your body, then where do you go when you leave it at night? Anyway, I went on again.
My name is Michaela.
Yeah.
I'll be your pet, okay? Got water.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Don. This is interesting conversation. Or
I hope later I
It-
can
it-
go a little bit deeper into the thing I was talking about.
it
Yeah.
we'll try. We're slow, but what we learned so far is it sounds like more moral roots is it like the core of our value system, or is it like something like, if like what you said, if we remove killing as a law, would our moral root still keep us from killing others? Or if it was strong enough to, if we have it ingrained so much that it's not good, and but for others
Yeah.
it's less strong, so they would kill, something like that.
Yeah, I also want to say, and this is just to hypothesize something, but and I don't know the answer to this because I don't think this ever has been done with a human. But imagine a single human being born in a lab tube that is completely away from all of humanity, like meaning there's no other humans, and it's completely from conception to fetal development to birth, and in a machine. Okay, in a machine, and then the moment this person is born, they grow up and raised by robots, AI, and whatever you want to call them, but no other actual humans around them. So essentially, this person is now growing up alone, being the only member of its species. What kind of moral values will this person have? Because now you have taken society out of the equation. But Don, you want to say something?
Yes. Interesting question, because there's a movie about it.
Oh
It's
my
called
goodness, what's the
Twins.
name?
It's called Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. And the character that Arnold Schwarzenegger plays grew up in an isolated environment with a scientist that controlled him. He had no exposure to anyone or anything else. And supposedly his moral standard was significantly higher. In other words, he was on the side of the light in comparison to the Danny DeVito character, which was supposedly his twin, where he was raised in society and he was on the dark spectrum. I mean, he was into crime and he was just, the bottom feeder, supposedly. So it's a possibility, is what I understand. But what I wanted to say was that I do believe, I have no evidence to this except a strong something inside me that says check mark or correct. But I believe that it's possible that all of us come pre-installed, so to speak, with a moral code, quote unquote.
Meaning that you're born and then you already feel something is wrong to do it? Is
No,
that what you mean?
No, what I'm saying is, I believe that we are pre-programmed with a right path. Words don't help. Words don't do it justice. What I'm trying to point at is that there is I don't know how to say it otherwise, a right way that could be embedded in all of us, but we have free will and choice and conditioning from our environment within this physical form. So what I am pointing at has nothing to do with his body. It has to do with the consciousness inside us that has that code that I'm trying to point at. And to move from that step to what I believe could be an end result is that we come into this environment for some purpose, and then we can collectively reach a state of consciousness where we can disembody, we can remove from this form and move to a different state. And I believe that it is embedded in us to do this, but we get caught in the form of matter, and that changes and confuses us. And we go through all of these different journeys and, coming back, recycling through to re-experience and relearn and condition as well the consciousness to awaken inside this form and continue whatever journey the consciousness has. The consciousness, I believe, has a job that it's doing, and it's trying to do it inside this form. I hope that makes sense.
I see. And by the way, Don, just really quickly to say my own theory on the question, I mean, not the question, the thing I proposed, right? Like a lab-grown human away from society. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but my theory is that kind of person will not have any morals, because I personally do think that in order to have any morals at all, you need to have a small community, or in other words, society. Because if you're just living by yourself, the only member of your own species, you can be surrounded by cats, dogs, rabbits, but that's not the same thing with other humans around. And whatever you do as a loner human, it's essentially just instinctual. I'm hungry, time to eat a rabbit. Plan for the future, I'm going to plant some tomatoes and some potatoes. That's about it. But now when you have other people around you, I think this morality really forms because, you can say it's conditioning, but also it's because in some ways we have to be honest with ourselves. We need to have a system that really should keep us from killing each other simply because we got mad.
I could say the same.
I just want to quickly say real quick that I would say that even in a lab, there is programming, there is conditioning, because that lab has it is a construct. It's built on rules. So a person cannot learn unless there are conditionings.
And an environment, right?
It's already pre-built, even in a lab. But even in society where people are living here and we are learning from one another, we always end up with some on the dark and some on the light side of it. So what we keep trying to do is we keep trying to force everyone into, we need to go to this right path. This has to be the way. And what can we do to make everybody come out this particular way? And what we fail to accept is that this world is built on this conditioning, this ebb and flow, this yin and yang, and acceptance and allowance of it has to be, because we cannot change what keeps coming out of this form. We can only change what's in our consciousness. So if we do that and we work from that level, then I think we can go into a different path collectively, but we cannot force and we cannot disallow or reject the dark side, because it is the dark that is teaching us to go towards the light.
Yeah.
If you want to experience that, Don, if I can sort of repeat, you shared a movie. It's a good movie, actually, another good movie, and it teaches you how pre-programming you can recondition trading places. That's an example how they can actually manipulate the groups around them to center out those people to have different roles. That's just one thing. Dark City plays another role. But I heard you say earlier, Don, this is where a lot of people mislead themselves. You have a concept, if you like to learn things about esoteric, the right-hand path and the left-hand path. A person that does one or the other only, right-hand path or left-hand path, forget about right and wrong at this particular moment, where you don't have to bring in the points, which is your heart. It's when you do bring in your right-hand path and left-hand path, because you were born with hemispheres, then you have to bring in your heart. The heart is kind of like the fool card, the gesture. It's like a king and queen. Publicly, the gesture will keep quiet. That's the wise person within you. But privately, it will say you guys aren't working together. Once you bring in the two paths, this is why people misunderstood the word wrong. It's the feminine side, the unknown part, the dark part. So until you become aware of those things, even the example you guys talk about a lab, if you were out in the wilderness, you would learn about pack. If you were introduced to a bunch of wolves, for example. But even if you weren't introduced to wolves, you'll understand it's too cold outside. Most people would. Some people are just, they're not designed that way. So rain can fall on them, cold weather. And then we, as the observer, would say, okay, their body either A is going to prove they're going to decay or freeze or whatever, or they have a different kind of blood type. So you could put it in a lab, but that's a program. Nature teaches us what interdependence is. I'm disappointed when humans say to themselves they're independent, where nothing shows they're independent unless you're talking about from within. The clothes you have, the cars you have, the technology we have validates you're interdependent. We have strived so hard to be so dependent when we're babies that we want to be even more dependent when we get older, want a religion, want a government, and then we bitch and complain about it. It's like people really, if they really understood that they've given up their sovereign being to grow their own food and raise their own animals, have no business complaining about GMO. They have no business complaining about it, unless they're just complaining for the sake of complaining, which most people do. They just complain, but they're being spoiled little kids at that point. How many people, even here, would understand what the sun and the moon has to be to grow your crops? Probably most of us wouldn't. So the ideal, it's an experiment. I do hear the gentleman talking about theory. For most people, there is people that are conspiring. And for some people, the theory, but there's other people, they have an agenda. Their agenda is to anchor this realm. This realm needs to be worked upon. We indirectly dirty up this planet or this plane, whatever word you want to use, the earth. You know, we drink water bottles. Well, why don't we go get our own water? Well, Dominic, I don't want to do that. I said, so are you validating that you're lazy? Well, I became a doctor. Does that prove that you're helping humanity? Or is it proven that people don't know how to take care of themselves? Which one is it? This is where the right and wrong distracts people from their own hemispheres. You have a hemisphere, king and queen, whatever you want to call it. Use discernment. I know I'm repeating myself, discern. You might have to gather the information first before you can assess the information. But most of it's been hand-fed to everybody. How do we have this language? The language we're using right now is a meaningful language. It's not like Greek, which comprehension, or Sanskrit. It's a healing language. But so even like the numbers we use, it's its own language. And number 9 is not just used for the sake of adding things up. It's a spiritual number. Same with number 7, number 6. Same with colors. These are all different information. You can condition somebody to do Braille. How do you explain to somebody, as a simple example, how do you explain to somebody that's never seen the color red before when they tell you you're blind more than I am because you've never seen red before? Close your eyes. Where do you see red? You don't. And when I say red, where do you see the word that you're trying to describe it to me with? Until you become aware of that, we're all in a box and different corners, and there's trillions of corners to describe, well, what's morality? What isn't it? You can deduce how you use it, and that's what we're talking about, how we use it, right or wrong. We talk about, I think, Peter, you use it as an example of purge. Would they ever give us a movie of purging where it's one day where everybody in the world have to hug each other? There would be a lot of people having an issue with that. So that would validate we've never worked collectively, and most people don't want to work collectively, but they want some of the advantages. And even that, not everybody wants to drive a car. Not everybody wants a grocery store. Not everybody wants to play with fiat currency. Go to tribal people. We don't do that. We're not interested in doing it. But some of them among them will say, let me take a chance. And then they get caught up in their comforts. This is why it's an individual journey for each individual. We can share with each other. That's why I use the word we're hearing each other. Listening should always be done within, hence the word meditation. That's what meditation really kind of, the energy behind it is, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to listen on that. Why? Because there's something function each one of our vessels, and it's not the ego. The ego just eats your food based on their likes or dislikes. It doesn't have a clue, well, how is it going to do all the processing? I just know what I'm putting in first. So the output, I'm only going to know the input and the output, but what's the processing part going on? Now I'm theorizing, obviously, because I heard the word, or I'm actually just using possibilities, because I could be very intuitive in some areas. In other areas, I'm just full of crap, and I'm okay with that, guys. Anyway, I went on.
The way, I don't know if anyone's still here, but yeah, so here's something that I actually formulated in my own head. This is one of those instances where I actually didn't just get it from a book, from a documentary, from another famous person, but I kind of was been thinking about what is moral and society and the structure of it. And I think the one I made, I constructed is actually quite interesting because I think it's got a validity to it. And especially it's the way, our political climate is, at least in this country and many countries alike. And when people ask, like, what, Peter, what do you think is a society, or how does it function, or how's morality related? I just give them the one-liner that I always give since I ever made this, which I think is pretty true. And that is, society is a constant negotiation society is a constant negotiation, and I believe of different conflicting morals, and I think that's how it has always been and how it is now, and I think it's has always going to be like, because, and it sounds cliche and corny, but I think it's true. It's, as long as we can accept the fact that even the most obvious moral can be denied by certain people, then it's not going to be completely agreed upon. And because of this, people have to work very hard to compromise. That's the word, another word, to compromise and to negotiate constantly with each other's conflicting morals. And I think there's like a sci-fi movie that describes this very best. Monkeys, as primates, they fight to the death. Sometimes, depending on what kind of primates, of course. Humans, a more advanced primate, we tend to negotiate. And the alien species portrayed in this TV show or movie, this alien species has reached a point where we call it utopian society, with the definition in the context of it's post-war, no more conflict, no more violence, and it's a post-scarcity society. So they are actually more in a flow state. I think some of you probably heard of this before. They're in total Zen. So humans are somewhere in the middle between total violence and the flow state.
I guess if I can share for a second, back onto moral. If I can just skip a little bit past, like say the root part, let's say we're in it now. It's an individual person, whether you guys can all ponder for yourself, would you kill another human being? Then you can assess, in those little parts, how you got to that possibilities or answers. It's a hypothetical for most people, but then you look at somebody like Jaro, who went to the military. He was trained to be in a position that some people could call harm's way. Now we can branch off and say, okay, are they the dogs for the economic people? Could be, but literally talking about killing a human being. I could pose the possibility hypothetically of what I heard about Hitler. Did Hitler kill anybody? Did any of his captains kill anybody? Or was it all their foot soldiers? So then they're the ones that doing the action part. So now we have to go backwards. We can't go to anybody else until we literally talk to that individual person and said, okay, so you were in a moment where you were trying to harm, or in this case, remove another human being. What are all your programs? And for a lot of people, it's a clear cut right or wrong. I'm doing it for my country. I no longer doing it for my country. I'm doing it for revenge because he killed my mate. I'm doing it now just to survive. Those are all the little sub-programs of what we think of defending and attacking going on. And I can replace the word with right or wrong. So now, for us to step back and hypothetically look at it and say, well, it's wrong to kill, then we can take that same picture and in watching another bunch of people going around hugging each other. So some people say, but I don't feel comfortable. I do, but other people don't. They don't feel comfortable hugging. So then you have to break down all the little programs within. We are in what we call the matrix. We just don't see like a fish stick. Does it see water? We don't see air. You'll see some of its effects. You'll see the leaves moving around, but you actually don't see air. So could air be what we hypothetically talk about, the energy waves? Like Tesla ever so lately touched onto this kind of stuff about energies everywhere. It fuels the trees and all that. Have you ever pondered, how did they get the GPS to work? You might see the material, you might see the end device, and you might see the first device, a satellite, but do you literally see all the different energies? And they can have all those different combinations. So now knowing that, then do we all get conditioned from the unknown, from prana, from chi, conditioning? Or do we literally think the only way I'm going to receive a text or a phone is through this device, which is true, but where's all the receiving, like it's receiving it, but where's it being all sent from? Now somebody can say, but from that satellite dish or from that satellite. Yeah, but where's the energy in between? So again, we're just talking about one aspect, in this case, morality. Even if you look at the word morality, we are mortal beings, meaning that we're in these forms. These are mortal forms. They have an expiry date. Some of them have tags on them. Some says this is good for 30 years, some people 60 years. Along the way, you might die suddenly, or you might learn another concept called suffering. Because most of us, don't know about you guys, but if my parents, when they're no longer with me, I still won't know what death is. But I do understand suffering.
Wait, what's the word again?
Death. I said death. Is that what you're talking about, Pete?
No, what the one you said, the one of the big word you said. Cephaly.
Don't know, Pete. Sorry, buddy. Sometimes I just go on. I blab, like I said sometimes.
Did you say
I,
anencephaly?
no, I don't think I did. But if that's a word, I like to hear it. If I said it out loud, I apologize.
Oh, okay. Maybe I misheard.
Oh,
I
no
was going to
problem.
say like it's very unlikely for someone to say that word, to be honest, because it's not very common.
Death, maybe. I know I said the word death, and did we really
Huh?
experience death? I know I've never, so
I think I heard suffering.
suffering. Yeah, I did say the word suffering.
Oh, never mind. Okay, that was
Okay,
yeah.
no problem. But, we do suffer. Our suffers are more or less in our attachments to our comforts and our pleasures. It's not too many people are going to walk out in the cold, wet weather with no clothes on, unless somebody's been conditioned. I'll do the Hoth program. I said, okay, so you're learning about how cold and heat work and how it affects some bodies. Because you got to factor in when you were born, what your blood type is. Now, some people might turn around and say, well, Dominic, I don't think that stuff is valuable and all that. I said, that's your perception. Who conditioned you to think that way? This is why when people say they have the concept of free will or an open mind, but The will has many variations to it. Free is just one. The mind has many variations to it. It could be open, receptive, closed. But even when I talk about the mind, I'm not talking about the brain. Those are just receivers. And we have many receivers in our vessels. Like I said, we're more high tech than a phone will ever be. But we're so caught up in the external. It's like a car. When somebody said, Dominic, I just want to be positive. I said, well, then how would a car work then? Because a car needs positive and negative and grounding. The sun and the moon and the earth, it's the same concept. So we're not creating anything. I think I've said this before, Don. We're not creating anything. We might be, like you said, Don, reproducing things. Like I said, I'm always hearing people, but I'm always listening from within because something inside of me is always storing that information. Now, do I know how to bring it back up? A lot of times I don't. That's why I make sure to point out, I will revisit some of these chats because I got to see how I play in the game. And then hearing other people, okay, Dom, you said that, they said that. Did you learn something? This is kind of like any kind of sporting event. Any interaction is a sporting event. You know, people like to debate with each other, which is fine, as long as they've debated with themselves first. Because if you do, then at least you've challenged yourself. I'm not interested in challenging other people. It's of no interest to me whatsoever. But I realize with a lot of people it is. So, okay, so I got to get caught up in that game they want to play. So there's an outcome. So what are the rules first? So now we have morality. What are some of the rules? Right and wrong is some of the rules. Adhering to the masses is another part of the rule. But most people don't want to play. They want to play in their own game and say, okay, it's like, I think Pete, you were talking about, well, people say, I don't want to adhere wearing a mask. Oh, okay. So you don't want a SIN number? You don't want to have a driver's license? Because there's many ways of getting out of these different variations of the games.
I mean, like to literally not conform. I mean, it depends on the degrees of extreme, right? Because some people can be, for example, there's on the light end of not conforming, because I'm the type of person who don't actually believe that we should blindly follow just because most people, because, you know, that has proven to be wrong many times in human history, if we know anything about human history at all. But I believe that at certain degrees we should moderate ourselves.
Mhm.
And for a couple of reasons. A, you don't want to get yourself in a position where, let's say, you're so what's the opposite of conformity? You're so standing out in different ways that people will ostracize you all the time. And secondly, you don't want to truly be reckless to the point that you go to prison or get shot by the police because, you know, let's say, because your definition, let's say someone's definition of not conforming is, I'm just going to start going to the street and killing people because it's against the law, and that's not what most people are doing. So if I kill people for out of no reason, so they're just to prove that I'm not conforming, that's going too extreme, right? But, you know, civil disobedience is a very desirable way to be non-conform. And it actually doesn't get yourself killed or get into legal trouble most of the time.
Well, you just say a word there. People just pass with civil disobedience.
Civil disobedience. Civil disobedience
But the
is very
word-
different. Is very different than just straight up committing crimes.
Yes, but you said a word. This is why we have civil wars. That's what we are to the people that rule over us. They don't have those they have packs. So police officers are packs. So religion is a pack. We have many packs. Now, if you want to stand outside of the pack, either they're going to worship you or condemn you. So now this is why when you hear, I don't know if you're Peter, I think you're from Canada too, where you hear somebody yap about reading from a script from one of our prime minister this right now. He's from she's from an elite family. They say things like, we're here to represent the people. They're not talking about the citizens of the nations. The people in the old days would have been called nobles. So this is where people just don't understand. You're still within the pack, or in this case, you're being obedient, unaware. Now, in some areas, we can become aware. Oh, so then when we pay property tax, who does that go to? Same old, it goes to corporations. Yeah, but where do they get the money to pay our citizens? It's called the budget. But before most of us get it, big corporations take a big chunk out of it. That's the game that's being played. Now, this is not about right or wrong, because most people, what they think right and wrong is their imagination. Their parents are feeding them information of right and wrong is to a child that's never seen through their own observation. So you're saying it's wrong to go down that hill that I've never experienced yet. That's why a lot of people literally have to put their hands on the stove to learn something. And if the parents tells you straight out from a child onwards, say, son, I want you to put your hands on the stove. And he does it obediently. I said, you're destined to be in the military. Another child that says, well, Dominic, Dad, I don't want to do it. Okay, you're destined to in these other industries. You could be even homeless. It's the one that asks questions, why? This is where you're going with Peter. Most people never learn to ask questions. Why do they say the word civil obedience, civil servants, and all that kind of stuff? Because
Oh,
those words.
I said disobedience, not obedience.
Okay.
It's, quite
Now
the
we're playing with
opposite.
words, but I even shoot away the word obedience. It's the civil part. We are classified as citizens among other people. Now, we can think you go to university that they design, and it's not there to educate you. It's there to school you, to conform you, to make sure that you become better workers. That's it. Now, during going to university or some sort of academic or whatever, you can educate yourself. You can bring out some of your abilities and say, oh, I'm actually pretty good with the stars. I'm pretty good with working with my hands. You know, I get it, Peter. You're doing a lot of searching from within yourself, but you're still looking outside of yourself for the answers, which if that works for you, Pete, all the power to you. Oh, and that's what, and I say that out of sincerity. I don't play the serious and silly game. You know, and when I do, I'll make sure I'm acting like Pinocchio to tell people I'm acting a little bit crazy today, but that's just me yapping. So now to think that obedience, in this case, I'm bringing the word obedience or civil disobedience, are we not being disobedient to ourselves first and foremost? I know myself, I understand health to no end. I just don't practice it all, let alone some of it. I might fast once in a while, but I realize, am I being disobedient to the vessel? That would imply that the vessel has its own intelligence, which it could be. You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of cell phones, if they could communicate, and they probably will, say, listen, power me back up again. Why? Because you're being neglectful.
You're being disobedient to Don.
Yes, I am. Sorry, guys.
You want to say something, Don?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I do believe that we look at is a part of the process, because to see yourself, you have to see outside of you, the mirror, so to speak. So, unless, some of us have come awakened already to our true selves. But so I don't feel that there is a right or wrong path, because it's relative. What each person goes through to come to realize who they are is it. That is it. That's the path. That's what it is. I do understand, I believe what you're trying to say, Peter, is that we can collectively choose what is a right way for us to behave as humans. And I believe that's what we have been doing all along.
Yeah.
I
And I
see.
also want to say, Don, that and I don't really know what the reason is, and I don't think I will ever truly know. And I hate to say this word, but I think there are certain things I've given up just because it's too painful to keep chasing without any hope inside. But it seems that I noticed that a lot of people, when it comes to morals, beliefs, politics, whatever you want to call it, it seems that people are so easily going to the extreme end of spectrums. It's almost like the gray area is completely overlooked on purpose. It's like you're either really a leftist or you are really a rightist. And that's the kind of thing that really frustrates me.
Yes, but that's why eventually I believe those who are ready come to realize that none of that matters. As soon as you are setting your affections on what is in this world, the physical world, you disconnect from your inner state of being. And what I believe is the growth of the consciousness. I believe this earth is some kind of a consciousness farm. So, but I don't believe it's wrong to delve into the matrix, the world, and to be involved in it. But there is like some kind of an inner compass that guides and pulls and navigates us through it. And some of us are more ready than the others, but we get confused. We think because we're ready, everybody else is supposed to be. You're supposed to be like this. You're supposed to do this and that. I know because I'm the queen of doing that. And I had to awaken to it and realize that for many years, other people were trying to awaken me, and I wasn't ready. I didn't even understand what they were saying. We have to allow and seek the change within. And that light, I hate using these terms because they've just been so overused and misused, but that it really is like a light that is within us that shines, and it really does attract other people
Hi,
to make changes
hi,
within
you.
them.
Good, how are
But I
you?
see where you're going with this, Peter.
Are you here to give her medicine or what?
Yeah.
No, my name's Juliana. I'm here with
I
speech
have
and
a
swallow therapy
Can you mute
uh,
yourself,
to
Gerald?
evaluate your swallow.
Hold on a second. Gerald, can
Her
you? mute yourself?
swallowing ability?
Hmm.
okay. I want to comment a lot of things. But first of all, Peter, you remind me when you were talking about civil disobedience, you remind me to Henry David Thoreau and Emerson. But Peter, you've been asking so many questions. It looks like you already know. You have your mindset already about what you're asking for. So you are looking for different opinion, and that's okay. Talking about civil disobedience or non-conformity, that what you were talking about, I want to share a story about my son when he was 2 years old. He got an infection. He got flu, and then the doctors told us that he had asthma, and he gave us medicine, albuterol, to get rid of the phlegms, machines to breathe in the night, and everything. And then we decided to get another opinion. We went and we didn't conform with that. That what that doctor told us about our kids. So we went to see another doctor. This one is here in LA. He was a doctor, but in alternative medicine. He studied herbs and everything. And the first thing he told us, you know what, get rid of this powder milk, the albuterol that's given us for the asthma. And then we follow the direction of these other doctors. And in a month, our kids, it was normal. The flu, the asthma problem that has with the phlegms, everything it disappears in a month, because we didn't conform. We didn't follow those moral rules of the doctor that say that they know everything. And okay, that's one thing. And you were talking about the moral. You keep talking about morals, the moral roots and everything. And I don't think we need AI or any alien came to tell us what's going to happen in our life. Talking about morals, do you think that when the European came to the Americas and start getting possession of the lands and getting rid of the natives, do you think they had good morals? Like Dominic and Dan were saying, it's
But would
it's
you
the
say, would you say, I don't know who said this, it was Dawn, I think, wasn't it, but doesn't it also depend on perspective, right? Like if you're the,
exactly.
if you are the Native American getting, what do you call it, colonized, then that's horrible for you, especially all the things that can be done when you're getting colonized. But if you're the colonizer,
Exactly.
then you're gonna be like, hey, we're doing God's work, you know.
That's my point. Two paradigms, two different paradigms. One from the conquerors and one from the people that were conquest, right? So they didn't have this technology in all more than 3,000 years that we have record of civilization. They didn't have this technology, and that is the same problem with slavery. Thank you, Dominic. It's the same thing, and this is not new. But well, I agree with you, Peter. A lot of people The majority, they don't think when a politician is talking about one thing and the other one about another thing. They don't think. They just are followers. They don't think, okay, you know what, maybe this is right, maybe this is no. They just follow. They are like in a religion. The religion says, every religion said that under the God eyes, we are equals. Are we really equals? The founder fathers of America, one of the actions is we are all equals. When they were master of slaves, they have hundreds of slaves, maybe thousands of slaves. So where is the moral?
But even
Yeah,
that, okay,
I guess nothing can be 100% inclusive.
we've never worked, Peter. I've never even read about that human race has ever worked collectively. Even when we talk about what we think is right, based on what? Because I'm an American Canadian, or because I'm Roman Catholic or something, state and religion together. No, that validates, even through observation from within. I kind of share with Don a little bit where we're always looking outside is because we're relying on our senses, and they've been conditioned. That's what the purpose of TV does. That's the purpose of what radio did to the ears, where it's the concept, eye of the beholder. It wasn't eyes, eye of the beholder. There's something within each individual human being that's been watching us the whole time, monitoring us. Even the Buddha said, let me fast and meditate on that. Abstain from eating because something's processing me, and let me listen within. We don't realize why people have the ability that they can actually put a book under their pillow. Because if things were inspired to be written, therefore through inspiration, you'll comprehend it. Why? Because the written work was never just there. It was produced. Now, this is why some people of science, they would learn their craft and they would do some sort of elusive, mood altering things. Next thing you know, they come up with the next element for us because we don't know what that is. Now, I say that very general, but there's no way like I can say that the humanity more times than not are ignorant. No, most humans are too busy doing something. Just observe them. They're driving, they're going to work, they're climbing buildings. If people let alone go and have discernment, which is beyond the senses, but you can use the craft of the senses to comprehend it. There's a realm here. It's called the realm of anchoring knowledge, but there's also another realm up there where you can have wisdom and understanding, where you can understand for yourself your place, and you can have discernment. This is why they have depictuations throughout in different religions of a mother holding a baby. They're depictuating the wisdom holding knowledge, the feminine holding knowledge. That's all that is. Knowledge is to know something. It doesn't mean you have discernment. And this is where the senses can easily be misled. Hence the word sin, misled. I can look at something and say, oh, is that really a dolphin coming out of the tree over there? No, that's a hologram. So that validates I can easily be misled. No different, I can taste something and I can say, yeah, that's sugar. And my buddy said, no, we manipulated that, but it tastes like sugar. That's why I said the five senses are easy to be misled. That's why when you read a book from left to right, up and down, you're training yourself. You're entraining yourself to just comprehend things through a very linear view, where somebody else says, well, Dominic, I like people reading stories to me. Yeah, because you can engage other things, your insight, your imagination, your intuitive aspect. I get it. I'm even hearing Peter, he sounds very scholarly and he's trying to inquire things. But I think, Peter, you do know some of the things that works for you. But I don't think you really could, and me too, I couldn't grasp how other people really live. I might sound like as though, oh, I can speculate. No different, I can speculate how an animal might feel about certain things. But there's people out there that do pick up the energy. That animal's suffering. And it's suffering because a long time ago, somebody took away one of their animals. See, we have different brains. We have the reptilian brain. That's definitely fight or flight. There's your right or wrong. Then you have the feeling brain. That's the animal part of our brain. What about the being part? The part that actually most of us never tap into, that we can create the internet, create steel, let alone all the different alchemy of languages. We don't go there. What we're doing is we keep on doing over and over to confirm something opposed to questioning things. And when I say question, and I've said put in the chat, I'm not talking about questioning others. I'm talking about questioning your reasoning, your thinking, your feelings, your emotions. That's a journey for each individual being. But unfortunately, most people think, yeah, we'll just make another dogma. We'll think democracy is correct, and we'll think everything else is wrong, and we're hoping everybody else is not going to question not other religions or isms, but their own. Question why you think the way you do. Question what you see. That's called the observer. That's right after know thyself. Then you realize there's an observer. Who is the observer? Now, somebody could turn and say, well, Dominic, then they say the word belief, because that's one step below knowledge. Well, I don't believe in that. I said, okay, so who gave you the story? That's what a belief is. I don't know if a guy named Jesus lived or didn't live. And even that would have to be a belief on my part. But if I did know he lived, I would ask questions. What do you stand for? Why? We have a bunch of shysters already now in the world. But who's the number one shyster? Would be me. Because I'm the one that has to be responsible for me if I think I'm even responsible, hence the ability to respond. This is why most people don't take accountability, because most people are too busy reacting what other people tell them to do. Kill that human being, hug that human being, watch that movie. They're not have discernment.
Well, you were talking about Jesus. I read the story. I'm not talking about religion, about talking about the, let's say, the little information that we have about that person. If existed, I don't know if, but a lot of people said that he existed in reality. But one of the main reason that, or the message he was talking is about that exactly that you were saying, Dominic, that we have to erase our programming, die to that old programming and reborn again. Okay, so that was the main message that I get from when I was studying on reading about Jesus. And he didn't create a religion. He never said that. He never created that. That came out 300 years after that, with the Emperor Constantine in the year 326. 300 years after. He didn't create anything about Catholicism. That Catholicism was created but to manipulate persons. Or moral, the root moral is, for me, in my humble opinion, is to control people, manipulate people.
Well, manipulate. There's a lot of manipulation. You know, again, the story of Jesus. Okay, let's go with Jesus. I'm even going to throw the story of Hitler into it. Jesus, most of them, even guys like Socrates, they knew enough not to write things down. They understand how oral speech works after thoughts. Written work is a photocopy version of all of that. It's a lesser work. No different. Today, people use calculators. It dumbs them down. So now, Jesus, if he did or didn't exist, what was the teachings that were put on him? Like me, I'm Michael Jordan. I'm showing that I'm using this razor blade. I'm using my name to promote a product that I probably don't even use. Same with Hitler. None of us met any of these characters. So now there's people out there that value what Nazism was all about. It was about depopulation, superior race. They weren't talking about the only race, which would have been okay. If they actually had the only race, I'd be okay with that. Okay, just kill everybody else, live on your own, punk. But what they did was depopulation. Now, if you understand the Rothschilds, you understand the Gates and the Musk family, they're all from those families. They all believe in depopulation. Now, people say, well, Dominic, I don't believe in that. So, well, let's make some observation. They did not introduce birth control pills. Yes, they did. They did not introduce the gay rights and all that kind of stuff, because with gay rights comes depopulation, because two women cannot have a child, two men can't have a child. And if you understand their flags, you understand chakras. They reversed it. See, this is where people need to learn observation with discernment. Well, most people do, oh, you know, Dominic, I got to read a book. So you're waiting for them to write you their books and their version. Now, I don't give a damn if that's church or whatever. Now, Jesus might have had the ideal of love thy neighbor. Well, who's thy neighbor if you've never been outside of yourself? It's you. So
he was talking exactly about yourself, not
about yourself.
Another person. Yeah.
Physician, heal thyself. Now, what I observe is it's not the few that are following Jesus, Muhammad, Tai Chi, and all these other guys.
Buddha, Confucius.
Or the few that are trying to follow Stalin, Hitler, not even Joan of Arc, Alexander, and all that. They're both few in numbers. What it is, it's the masses that are so fucking indifferent.
Yeah, and we don't have to go all the way to Hitler. And a lot of I've been talked to. The last time I talked to one friend from Germany, he told me that he was a dumb guy. Wait a minute, he wasn't dumb. When he was able to manipulate hundreds of people from Germany, he wasn't that dumb.
Again, Jorge, we're going with the ideal that somebody's telling us a story. If you follow what other people wrote, if you value the concept of learning your craft, then you start piecing it together. Why did they disassemble Germany initially? Why were the Rothschilds, or at the time the barons, telling all the Jews to come back into the new native called Israel? Why did Stalin, who's in a club, went over back to Russia and they finally got rid of the Tsar's family? We're all too busy looking at the one person in the movie. Oh, I got to look at the guy from the Game of Thrones. No, look at all the people in the background. The guy at the front is just a distraction. I don't give a damn if he's Buddha himself. It's a distraction. See, but that's what most people do. Most people are so self-fucking absorbed, and that's probably all of us included in this. We're so self-absorbed, but we can't see observing the self opposed to being self-absorbed. But yet we punk off, said, "Oh, I went to philosophy. I learned about what's his name, Socrates. He's fucking dead, you moron. Wake up." If you're going to philosophize, it's all those whys. That's philosophizing. All the hows is science. But when somebody gives me a name, I feel like saying, fuck off. It's not important. But if that's important to you, which is fine, I get it. I'm overstepping here too, because I get it. There's 5 of us here. If it was a private conversation, I would say, okay, so are we gonna monitor what direction we're gonna go with these inquiries? Because I want inquiries. Even with words, there's inquiry. There's energy to every single word we use. Now, if a person says you misunderstood what I said, as long as you're understanding yourself.
And yeah, I agree, Dominic. And what about the moral rules that in the era of the monarchy, when they believed, the king believed that he was descended from God? What kind of moral was?
Well, that's a game. That's a game. And then you get people that say, "Oh, we don't want anarchy." Why? Anarchy just means without rulers. Now, but at chaos, you can have chaos in any system. We have a chaos now where in America, the economy's already collapsed 20 years ago, but people think, oh, no. Well, how do you have the Cold War when Russia says, okay, we're no longer going to build all these nuclear energies, forget about wars. Nuclear does exist now, and it serves purposes for the elites. But if you're going to have all of this, well, then how can we have still free trade with you, America, when everybody else is forced to use your currency? But it isn't America's currency. It's the Federal Reserve's currency. Those are families. If people ever want to understand stock markets, don't look at the Dow Jones. That's a small stock market. It's the big corporations.
Then when Peter was talking about chaos, if you don't follow moral rules in every community or every country, so chaos is being all over, always.
Sorry, what's that word again, Jorge? Chaos?
Chaos, yeah, chaos.
Like
because you don't follow rules or morals.
No. To me, I do follow rules. I just observe them while I'm in them. I'm not here to be disobedient. I'm here trying to understand the rules. If I'm in a community, and I know there's a mafia guy that runs the community, I would have to understand private and public conversation. Publicly, I'm going to say, if that's what he wants to hear, he's a nice guy, no problem. But privately, I could say, even to his presence, I say, listen, you're an idiot, you're a moron, you're a piece of crap, but I understand your rules. He said, Dominic, I'm glad you told me that privately, because if you did it publicly, I would have to scorn you for it. So now, in this particular case, I'm not trying to be disobedient. I'm just trying to understand the rules that I'm in. Now, some people turn around and say, well, Dominic, I don't have time to. Yeah, because you're too busy being conditioned somewhere else. If you're going to play the game of any sport, don't worry just about the outcome. Understand the rules. What are the rules? What are some of the things you could do? I could play anybody chess. I understand how to play the game chess. I could play anybody that knows how to play chess. I'm just not worried about the outcome, winning or losing. Most people are caught up in the outcome. That's conditioning. Now, for me to understand how the rules are in Canada, that's my responsibility because I live here. If I want to learn how it is in America, I do understand. The Constitution was written quite clearly. We the people and our prosperity, we the people in that room and our bloodlines. It had nothing to do with the citizens and nothing to do with the slaves. So if people don't understand that, they're playing a game without even understanding the rules. This is why when I hear humans talk on a regular basis, well, they're taking our rights away. You have one right, and even now you don't have a right. You have a responsibility to the vessel that you're in. You want to go on a plane? That's a privilege. You want to go on a train? That's a privilege. You want to go in somebody else's fucking grocery store with or without your mask? That's still a fucking privilege. And until you're aware of that, you're still a fucking kid. And I don't give a shit if I say it politely or I say it very harshly. Most people are too busy. Oh, well, you know something, Dom? We're going to have a purge. No, you know what we're going to do with the purge? We're not going to kill anybody. We're just going to make them fucking suffer. So you can hear for the next 3 weeks going, How many people would have a problem with that? Come on, guys. Humanity, if you look at it from the observation, we've never worked collectively. So it's a bonus too, because there's other beautiful things in the world because we didn't work collectively, music, dancing, creating things. But if we did work collectively, I'd rather do the kill each other first collectively. Once we get that out of the way, let's hope there is such thing as reincarnation. And then we can actually do the other part. Do the negative first, if there's such thing as negative. Anyway, I went on. Sorry, guys, about my language too.
Well, I just want to say that I understand your belief, Dom, but I don't agree because the elites, so-called elites, own these constructs and they only have them because we, the enslaved, so to speak, built them for them. Okay, so I can understand how there's some people who say they have rights to it. And I agree, but I also agree that you don't have rights to it. It is a privilege to use it because they own it. We gave over control and power to other humans to control and rule over us. So I don't believe it's as black and white as you are saying it. And it, you know, if I were to be in my emotions, I would say, wow, it's rather harsh for you to tell me that I'm fucking stupid and I'm not awake and don't know what's going on and don't understand the rules, because there are many different perspectives on it. And my perspective is that we built it. We enslaved, built for those that we allowed to enslave us. So I can understand the perspective that they believe, many of us believe, that we have a right to it.
Well, Don, valid points. I don't know about agreeing or disagreeing. I just went on a foul tangent or whatever, and I did allow my emotion to get to me. But if I can break it down on a very rational point of view, the both slave and master are both conditioning. There is people that probably have fought what we call, not the system as much as they fought other people that wanted to be lazy. I'm not saying that people that were, they've always manipulated, they've always broken up the family and shipped kids to one part of the world, the wife, a woman to another part of the world, and then entrap them and then recondition them again. But there's been a lot of people that have fought, themselves to say, no, I want to be my own sovereign being, but then there's no room for them. Where a lot of people, a lot of it's our comforts. Sure, we could turn around and say our ancestors built all of this. Okay, but did they build all the devices? Well, no, not really. So when you start narrowing it back, if you can, if the person does want to go backwards into that tunnel and then say, okay, but even if you wanted to, a lot of even tribal people had struggles among themselves. That's why they would have a wise woman or a wise person, and then they would negotiate on their behalf to say, okay, we've just come to some new invention, how to do crops or raise our animals. And then we would share for the betterment of all groups. And along the way, that could even keep a subtle peace with each other. But then there were people that wanted to break away from those nations and then say, no, I just want the comforts. I don't want to have to do all the work. That's always been engraved in all of us. Now, if that's the system overall, then we're living in the world of stage. Now, me saying what I said, I'm talking about me. I'm just talking out loud. Now, I could overgeneralize and say, okay, humanity and all that. But most of humanity, if I have an issue with anybody, they're just ignorant. And I'm ignorant still too. We're indifference. Well, Dominic, I'm too busy. I got to go to work. I'm too busy. I got to earn all this money. I said, so you don't even want to understand how fiat currency come to be? Well, not really. No different people that were under slavery. Doesn't matter who was under slavery. We're still under that concept. We're enslaved to ourselves by saying, okay, so let's say they stop bringing food to our countries. Oh, okay, so we're going to start growing our own crops. Well, most people, would they know how to grow their own crops? Would they know how to skin an animal? Probably not. So we think we've become so educated, but we're not. We're actually going backwards because we're no longer supplementing our own needs. We're too busy chasing our wants, our lacks. Want to have the latest phone. And I'm talking from that position. I know my hypocrisy. So it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. If I'm talking out loud, who's gonna defend what comes out of my mouth for me? I don't know. I don't need somebody to defend me. I just need somebody to hear me and say, oh, okay, Dominic, I see some of that even in myself. If you choose to. If not, then we're living in a blissful little world. Live till 60 years old, 70, 100, maybe some people 120. Depends how you live during those years, let alone how you live in the back end. It's individual journey. You come in alone, you're going to come out alone. I don't give a damn if you're a twin, you're still coming in alone. If you value that you come in through the vessel, that's your choice too. But I cannot turn the fact that we have lots of people in the world, now that could just be a story now, that are poor. There's people out there, which could just be another story, that they're rich. How would somebody become rich? We haven't reinvented anything new, because most people don't want to take care of ourselves. We want the convenience of driving from one community to another community in 5 minutes, opposed to in past, it would have been a day's work. Anyway, I see two hands. I apologize. I'm going to shut it down.
Sorry, Peter. Do you have another comment?
I see Don's hand up and Jarro's.
Come on, Peter. You're doing good.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to have my hand up.
No problem.
But Jairo's had his hand up for a while. I'd love to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, please, Jarro. Hi, Joel.
Morning, Joel.
Good
Papa Joel.
morning. Good
Ah,
morning, Florida.
good morning, Joe.
Yep.
You've missed a great conversation.
No, this
I
is on
mean-
YouTube. This is on YouTube. You can watch. You can hear it
Oh,
later.
you can go to the Wake Up and Think Clearly channel and go to the live section, and it should be up there. But we were talking about something like moral root, and like, is it something subjective, something like that? It was introduced
Yeah,
by
exactly
great
what it is.
thinker Peter, because Peter has been going within himself and thinking about these things that we rarely think about, because we assume that we got it all figured out. But then
And
it helps
I
us.
also want to say that it's better for me. I have noticed that once I understood something, it's easier to also understand other people.
Oh, I better take this yellow suit off. Oh, what I wanted to say was thank you for Peter for introducing that, and Dominic introduced something last night that could tie in, like was aloneness versus loneliness. So when we go within to think about these moral dilemmas, or what is morality, then we have to go into aloneness. But then when we find ourselves in a dilemma and that nobody knows what we're dealing with, and we want to share, and we feel loneliness. So thank you for coming together so that we can overcome our loneliness after having meditated in aloneness on morality.
Okay, thank you, Jairo. I have to go. Joel, good morning. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Peter. That was a good topic. I hope to see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
What is a yellow suit that you're wearing, Jairo? Are you in hospital or something?
We can't hear you, Jairo. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm in the hospital.
Oh,
And my mother is got COVID a few days ago, but she's getting better. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Please tell her that I was asking about her if she feels well enough to talk at all.
Oh,
Earlier, she talked to us. She waved and she said some words to us.
Oh, good.
Oh, and here
Good.
comes Evie, of course, feeling left out.
That's quite a piece of machinery there, Peter. What is it used for?
Were you taking a break?
Oh, no, Joel was asking you, Peter, about your picture or image, I think.
Oh, I just got back from the bathroom. I didn't hear anything. Can you
Oh.
say again, Joe?
I was just wondering what kind of piece of machinery that is.
Oh, that's it's something that I use every day at work, actually. This is robotics for spine surgery.
Wow.
I work as a neurosurgeon, specializing in complex spine surgery with minimally invasive robotic assisted approach.
Is that
So
in
you could
Florida?
no, not in Florida, and I will just say that I don't like to disclose that for
Oh, I understand. That's
private
fine.
reasons. I have kind of, well, just to give you a little bit without giving too much, because I don't want to make you think I'm being too shy about it, but I have had people track me down before, trying to ruin my reputation because the things I said disagree with them. And I really don't want to risk that again. But I have been to Florida before. In fact, I actually taught in certain locations to medical students, but I don't live there. No, I don't work there.
Well,
So
I was
it's quite, it's, for me, it's, I most people are surprised by this. I actually, one of my degrees was actually in philosophy. I also love history and, talking about this whole moral thing, and obviously working in neurosurgery, neuroscience. And if you really think about it, it's all very brainiac stuff. So
Well, it's nice to meet you and hear a little bit about you. And Dawn, they missed you at the Socrates Cafe last night.
Yeah, I I have a lot going on. It's
Good.
tax season, end of the year for me, and also I am suddenly moving.
Oh.
It's a good thing, but the timing is unbelievable, and I'm having abundance. I have tons of new people tracking me down, trying to get me to work with them. And the house, I thought I had, a nice amount of time to move out. I was going to move closer to my office, but a client of mine has someone interested in buying the house I'm in. So I had to get out. It's unbelievable what's happening. It's great, but
So have you found a place to move?
I found a place. I can't believe it's less than 5 minutes from my office. That's
Oh,
amazing.
great.
I am just like, I'm trying to find a personal assistant. It's hard to find anybody who wants to work. I'm at the point where I'm looking at hiring a child at this point. Like I just have to grow my own. It's really amazing what's happening.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And
I
the
miss
weather
my-
is good in Florida?
Yeah, we had a nice storm overnight. I think we needed that. So, settled down a lot of this yellow dust that's been, falling from the sky, this pollen. So I think it's all good. I really can't complain, even though, we usually do as humans.
The scientific term for it is kvetching.
What does it mean?
Means complaining.
Oh,
See, it's the Yiddish word for complaining. Kvetching. I'm sorry to hear that Hiro's mom has come down with COVID again. This is the second time she's had it, I think. And that chap that I thought of who might want to learn, you're probably too busy now, might want to learn Vinci online, hasn't responded, so I assume he's not interested.
that's okay. Everything happens exactly when it's supposed to. So when it's time, then he'll come along and or someone will come along for me.
Yeah.
you're gonna ask Joe. I've been here before, but it's been a long time. So I've seen you before because you have the unique background image, but are you, I guess, how do you say, are you the leader of the group?
No. Hyro is the group's host and leader.
Oh,
And
I just see the word
Dominic-
certified, so I thought it's some title. Yeah.
It is, but it's a self-proclaimed title.
Oh, that's interesting. I can call
I'm-
myself Your Honor, so you can call me Your Honor if you want to.
Exactly. You can
Even
call
though
me
I'm
Joe,
not a,
you can
even though I'm not
call
a
me
lawyer.
Joel. You can call me whatever you want. I'm not fussy.
I actually had to call someone the great one. The great one, like in another group, which is kind of hilarious. It was a competition to see who has the best self-proclaimed titles. And I actually won the competition because it was the most unexpected. Some people say the great one, the honest one, or William the Almighty. And my title was 007.
Uh,
Well, I think I want to be the grand poobah or poopaba, or whatever word that is from the Flintstones.
the Grand Poobah, I think it's called.
Poobah. That's mine now. I might have to add it to my name.
What
I
does
don't
it
know
mean?
if I don't know if Poobah is gender specific or not.
I
Maybe
don't
you have
know, but even if it is, I reject the gender restrictions and I'm gonna take it anyway. Isn't that the way our world works today? So might as well.
Dominic, I hear things weather-wise are better in Toronto than I have it here in Texas. It's been very warm, I hear from other people. Dominic may have gone for now, but oh, here's a cat. Ginger, come and say hello. She won't come to me.
Joel, it's warm inside.
It's warm inside.
Yeah, that's the weather.
But what about outside? I hear it's not bad outside either. You got no snow yet?
Still warm inside.
You're Canadian, right?
I am.
I can tell very easily by how you guys pronounce out.
Out? What
The,
about how we say y'all?
The O part of out is very Canadian.
Y'all.
Y'all?
My mother always say that wrong. She says yo. I'm like, no, please don't even try. Because I'm like, oh, and she will like no one will understand her and they'll think she's speaking another language. That's how embarrassing it is.
Yo. Well, I went to a very nice museum in Fort Worth and had a bit of an adventure there.
You mean Dallas, Fort Worth?
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't know any
Fort
Fort Worth in
Worth is-
Canada.
Fort Worth has not been Dallas since 1849. They are very proud of their distinction from Dallas. They're close to Dallas, but they're not Dallas. And they have a museum called the Kimball Museum, art gallery actually. And they have the only Michelangelo painting in North America. The original Michelangelo. And I tried to touch it, but it was covered in glass.
Probably not allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably
The human hand skin, we have a lot of oil. You don't want to damage it.
I agree. But I thought I would surreptitiously, because how many people can say that in their lives they actually touched an original Michelangelo? So the gallery was very empty, and I mentioned to my partner that I wanted to touch it. And she said, "Oh, it's not allowed, and there's security guards, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, well, she's probably right. And then she said that she did it. She touched it. And I didn't believe her. I said, "You wouldn't do that. She's usually more restrained than I am." But she insisted that she did. And it just irked me that she would have the temerity to take my idea and abscond with it. So I went back to the painting and I took pictures and I watched all the security guards. And just as they turned to walk in the other directions, and I looked across the hall, there was a third guard looking. I thought I would momentarily take my pinky and touch the corner of the picture like the Sistine Chapel portrays. And I would have the unique life experience of having touched a Michelangelo painting, actually what's reputed to be his very first painting, The Torment of St. Anthony. And lo and behold, it was covered with a glass plate. So she was lying to me after all. But it was quite a little adventure even to consider doing it.
Joel,
Well, I'm just saying, right? It's a
outside,
lot of security. Yeah.
outside of all the pleasantries, which is great when you do at the beginning, the guys, if we want to continue, if everybody wants to continue on, somebody presented the topic moral roots. So if you want to somehow tie that up with paintings or Da Vinci or Weathers, it's like, this is like me talking to a bunch of guys about $1 billion contract, and now they're talking about their kids' bathing suit contest, which is fine. I get it. So I just need to know for myself if there's going to be a continuation on the topic, or this is again like the first 5 minutes of every conversation of any meetup. Because Joe, you did come here an hour and a half later, which is fine, but if you want to talk about something like morals, if not,
For me, I just want to use real world example for once about what I was talking about, connect that with what I was talking about, my topic. And then I'm willing to do whatever you guys want to do, like change topic. I don't care, but I want to do this just because I haven't had the time to say it. But so, for example, moral root, which is, Joe, in another word, is core values. Okay, and then that's another way of looking at it. So let's say person A, let's say Joel is person A, I'm person B. Let's say Joel believes that I'm just using it as an example. Of course, I don't know your moral roots at all, but let's say your moral root let's say you are a guest. So let's say you believe intrinsically that people in general can be rehabilitated if the treatment is correct and enough time has passed and the quality of treatment is good. Then you are more likely than not, I'm not using the word guarantee because there's no such thing, then you're more likely than not to believe in support a justice system that is probably not overarching in terms of punishment. This is not to say there is no punishment, but you're less likely to say I'm for death penalty or life in prison, no parole, throw away the keys, because your moral root literally is, let's say, is on the grounds of most people can't be rehabilitated. We just have to find how. Now, let's say my moral root is the opposite of Joel's. I think a lot of people, or criminals, I should say in this case, cannot be rehabilitated. We're not debating whether this is true or false, because we're not doing that. We're just seeing the moral root. But if this is where I'm coming from, let's say most people, I don't believe most people can be cured once they become a killer, for example, then I am more likely than not to support a much harsher punishment in the justice system. So why am I pointing this real life scenario out? because here is just one of the many examples of how the moral roots, or in other words, the core values, can dictate how an individual will choose how certain institutions in our society should be, and therefore it's going to affect our political leanings and how we vote for bills into laws. And I think this is pretty much what everyone has been doing. And I think, I hope this is a very clear connection, because, and I use a real world example. And again, going back a full circle, what I was saying the first 5 minutes of the meeting is to really know the person you're speaking to, or speaking with, I should say, their moral root on anything that they're talking about. It makes you understand them a lot better. This is not to say you have to agree with them. They don't have to agree with you, but it's more likely for understanding to happen instead of just pure confrontation. Because without understanding moral roots, the person A and person B might say, how dare you let the criminal go off so easily? And the person B will say to person A, how dare you treat the prisoner so harshly? Because at the bottom, our core values determines all that. Was anyone there?
Yeah, I hear you, Peter, and Dawn was there, but she just muted herself, so.
Well, I hope that makes sense, Joe.
I don't know if you saw the paper. I've just been reading a little bit about a somewhat related subject that I put in the chat about morality. Apparently, there are, according to some scientists, 5 core moralities that people inherit as human beings, and the rest of it is molded through the concept of learning over their lifetimes. But yeah, that made sense.
Yeah, it can be attached to anything, whether someone is pro-choice, pro-life, pro-death, capital punishment, anti-capital punishment, immigration, anti-immigration. That really all falls down to individuals' moral roots.
So in that case, sir, Peter, as I'm hearing you describe that, are we talking about when we're in and how it acts out in moral? Because the moral roots would be, are we going backwards to see how that person come to those conclusions of what they think, if it's abortion they're talking about, or people that are prisoners or whatever?
Yeah, how it acts out, you're right about that. It's how we use the moral roots. Yeah, we're no longer talking about how we gained it, because we just spent the past like an hour talking about that.
Okay, fair enough. Was it hypothetical, or are we basing it on somebody else's depiction about prisoners? Like, has anybody here committed a crime that they spend time in jail and been in that situation? Because a lot of times when we talk about morals, we're talking more or less from a theory point of view, unless we're going to talk about our own morals.
Well, I mean, I can ask around people who are still here, and I'll just put a general question out there to see, which general direction you guys lean in this particular situation. But do you guys believe most people can be rehabilitated? Most offenders, I should say, or would you say that it's unlikely? I know it's a big generalization, but let's just keep it simple. But for me, I think it's complex, but I think a lot of people can be rehabilitated. But I also do think under certain situations, as in neurological damage, especially irreversible, and in combination of other things, such as the way they were raised and bad nature and nurture, and then brain damage later, there isn't really much science or medicine can do for that person. So I also see exceptions in that.
You could sedate them with medicine. I know in other industries where women that work with battered wives or whatever, a lot of times the men themselves, for whatever reason, how they got into that physical violence, are usually have to be mandated to get any sort of therapy or some counseling or whatever. So prison would probably fall under the same scope, where a lot of times you're forcing somebody to modify their behaviors, but the true test is, can they do it without that modification after? And for most people, their habits are so engraved. It's a path that's been so engraved, they couldn't even see if there was another small path deviating from it. So I think that we could say that about a lot of people, even in ourselves. We've been modified. Could most of us, forget about using the word living off the grid, because that just means one thing, but could you live back into nature now? For a lot of us, there would have to be a really strong reason to change our ways. And then other people use things as a crutch. A guy that quits drinking, for example, not understanding the emotion attached to it, will say, look, I'm on my 10-year chip. And I'm like, okay, so you're still attached. There's no different. Somebody else says, I'm a Christian now, so all the behaviors I did before, I'm no longer doing those things, but you're using something else as a crutch now. So I think as you're using Peter as an example, unfortunately, there's a lot of big corporations, they benefit from keeping people in that way of thinking. So they don't even try to modify a person's behavior when they're in prison, where you're trying to correct or at least present to them certain things that our community or our parents failed to do. Unless neglect, and that's what happens. Most of us, when I say failed, it's neglect I'm talking about. I'm not saying a parent truly teaches their child to be very criminal, let alone really good. What they do is they neglect their responsibility as having offsprings. And they'll use justification. I'm too busy working. I got to go to school. I said, those are justifications now, or excuses. So it's, again, the moral roots. I think the closest we could get to, maybe in some of those situations, is chip away at some of the things that we've done. The root itself, we could speculate. We could say things like it's been conditioned, or because you're in that industry now, you shared that. You could say the neurons and all that kind of stuff. But then again, the brain is just one aspect. The mind and the brain are two different things. The brain is a receiver. That's why we have many words in Latin with the word ment in it. It means mind, because we use words to describe things that are undescribable. It's a mind fuck, if anything. So, but anyway, back to your initial inquiry about,
Yeah, it's also like another, if there's another more, I don't want to say extreme, just yet another example. Let's say person A's moral root for self-defense. Okay, let's use self-defense as like this, what do you call it, context. Let's say person A's moral root says, I am willing to forgive anyone, no matter what.
Okay.
Then that person is very, very, very unlikely to use lethal force for self-defense, even if it's necessary. But if person B says, my life, my family life must come first, especially compared to a scumbag who wants to cause havoc in our own house and possibly even harm us, then that person is much more likely to use lethal force in self-defense. So you see this, here's another scenario where the moral root kind of determines a person's actions.
They both have morals at that point. So now, once it's done, then we can discuss as the observer and say, okay, so what are some of the result, like some of the equation you're doing, Peter, it's kind of like watching Cinderella with the prince. I want to see the day after. I want to see the human aspect. So in this case, the one guy that doesn't, he values or believes, it's a little bit different with the world, they believe that they can forgive whatever happened. Well, forgiveness is usually done in the thoughts. Once you do something with your action, you don't ask for forgiveness, you show by example. But in this case, he chooses to do that and the person harms him or kills him. Okay, so now we have to follow the person that's basically committed the crime. More times than not, it'll be justifications. Or they'll just give some sort of tainted little apology. No, you can't replace that person now. The other person, his moral is to defend themselves at any cost. So now we're doing the perpetual, you create a gun, he's using a gun to defend oneself, and it's the same person that uses a gun to attack another. So now the child can observe that and says, well, that's a perpetual cycle. There is no answer to that, Pete. There's just possibilities, which will stream to other possibilities. Unless you go into the inquiry, and I already get that sense with Pete, you already go into the inquiry thinking that there's an answer. So therefore you have to create a problem, which is fine. But if you're looking at possibilities and you're
Well,
theorizing,
I think answer is
yep, you're validating it.
what is considered correct answer is up
See,
to the
but
individual
you're-
themselves. You know,
But,
it's not.
but you're going in there with an
I'm
answer
not.
already.
I'm not trying to advertise what is the correct answer.
No, I
because-
know, but
Because
but
some
you're-
people actually are willing to lay down their own lives for someone who is trying to harm them.
So that's a possibility. From the outside, we're looking at, that's a possibility now, because we're not living it. Living it is the result, and then you can say there's an answer. So if you're talking about possibilities, you don't lean towards possibility, Pete.
Well, but you, Dominic, you cannot live something if you have been killed.
Again, we're not experiencing that, so we can only theorize about what we're talking about now. Everything that you've talked about is a theory. Unless you can truly say, Dominic, I actually was in that position. I believe in all of that. That's my ideal. And I was in that situation and I chose to either be killed, but I didn't get killed, but I got wounded, or I killed somebody else. You didn't experience that. So now we're using possibilities. This is where people, even when they philosophize, you can only do the whys. If you come into a philosophy inquiry with thinking that there's answers, then you're not philosophizing anymore.
Well, since you asked, Dominic, I have been through that personally.
Okay. So personally, you're one
Yeah,
person
I
out
have
of,
personally been through that. It's just I didn't share it because
okay, good enough.
because I don't want to start off with such negative stuff, you know.
Then it's not, then not making a person. It's like me talking to somebody hypothetically about molestation, and then they finally revealed to me they've been molested. I said, okay, so I stand on the ideal, and that's what I do, that both people in that interaction have harmed themselves and the others, whether they know it or not. But the person that got molested might turn around and say, but what about me? I said, okay, so what did you have for lunch? I don't know. What did you have for breakfast? I don't know. So you're taking a point in a history, a story that you experienced, and you're making it probably bigger than it is, not to take away that there's feelings involved. See, feelings usually get in the way of trying to reason things or rationalize things, which is fine as long as you're developed emotionally. If you're not developed emotionally, that's why we still have wars among our species, because that's all about emotions, which is fine. So in this particular case, if you've actually experienced, so you don't have to say it straight out, but if you're beating around the bush so you can find out some sort of resolution of why you were put in that situation, then you have to go inwards on that one, Pete, because you have all those different pictures going on within yourself. This is where we go from being smart to clever opposed to being wise. Most people get stuck on being clever. Looking for answers is a clever position. Knowing everything is the idiot position. The person that's seeking is the fool now, because most people aren't seeking for information, let alone perceiving that information that comes to them. Now, I could be full of crap and I'm okay with that. You're talking to a guy that's okay with that kind of stuff. Where other people, oh, Dominic, I'm not worrying about writing a book. I think it's a waste of energy for a lot of people when you have so many. And if we had technology today, you think a book would have been written back then? They would say, no, that's savage fucking technology. So now, in your hypothetical situation, it sounds like it's a little bit more real than it is. And you're asking other people that are playing the hypothetical game, but meanwhile, you have something on us that's not really being appropriate to the inquiry. Is this how you inquire with most people? Being clever? I'm just asking, because we all are clever.
Hello, Gerald. Welcome
Hello.
outside.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Joe. What a wonderful discussion. I feel like I'm ignorant of morality. Oh, but I have heard that in order to overcome suffering, one of the first prescriptions on a spiritual path would be to promise to do well, at least in the Indian traditions, you get the disciples to promise to do things that are hard for them, like but to do it as the best you can, like say maybe you eat meat, so you make them promise to get down to not eating meat and things like that. So but or maybe it could be an addiction, like yeah, like if you want to overcome an addiction, like you drink too much alcohol, then you and you feel that now is the time to fix your life, then you might promise to reduce it to zero, to abstain. And so I guess that would be called not morality, but more like a moral discipline to get your life in order before starting an actual spiritual practice. So there's a lot of that that happens in spiritual paths, like maybe Jesus said, love your enemies, or like for adultery, just thinking about wanting your neighbor's wife, that would be committing adultery. So you want to work on that by self-discipline. So that's something to think about. Morality not as something that's for society, but something for oneself as a form of self-discipline to get life. So I said I got to do some of that, like go home and clean my room as a discipline.
Jaro, I think scarcity usually plays a role in some of these situations when people talk about not, and this you're using that example, not eating meat. Well, if you're saying it during a time where food is, in this case, meat scarcity, it will cling more times than not to the people that are reacting. Same with Buddha, and it was in time the way the story was written, that he came from a wealthy kingdom or whatever, and his mother died at birth. He's going to try to understand what death is. A lot of things that happen in those moments when you're coming into the womb could be recorded. So now, if I live in a place where there's an abundance of food and not realizing that a lot of it's been handed to me, such as grocery stores or all the carting it all in, then I would have a difficult time, if not a lot of people would have a difficult time averting their ways of thinking things. And energy usually flows to the strongest energy, regardless if it's positive or negative. So if a whole bunch of people think that it's wrong to kill an animal, that's where the energy is going to go towards, especially if you're in that energy. This is why when people, women, usually the alpha female, if she's in a group with a bunch of other women on a regular basis, their cycle will unite. Now, whether or not science or some person that's working through science grasp that information. So again, even with morality, that has to do with energy. If a lot of people perceive this particular device is called the hammer, that's what it's going to be called. But then there's other people that can break away and say, I'm going to use it for different things. I'm going to use it not to bang a nail in, but I'm going to use it to wedge a door open. This is where the will can use many variations to it. So again, unless you're having your own personal experience from within, you're engaging within and then saying, okay, so there's many possibilities. Well, oh my God, I don't want to do all these different possibilities. Well, then you just want an answer, or you want to be limited to the many different possibilities out there, which is fine. I sacrifice in other areas of my existence in exchange for me to be aware of other things. Now, am I being clever? Well, is not a person being a lawyer being clever. What do you mean? He goes to school for so many years for one degree, practices it for another 20 degrees. If you have too many lawyers, it's our responsibility to inquire, are we handling our own affairs, or are the existence of lawyers proving that we're not? Now, if we're talking about economics, then I can explain a whole bunch of other stuff that is a possibility. Going to the moon, having so many people wearing masks, because that's all economics. There's people that are gaining from all of that. Next time you actually pay for any of your certificates, look carefully and see that there's a written on it, corporation, because that's where the money goes to. Governments are kind of like back in the days of Robin Hood. He stole from the tax collector. He never stole from the elites, but as a reward for stealing the tax collectors, the elites would punish the citizens by taxing them more. So Robin Hood at that particular time in that story, he was an idiot. But hey, that's just me yapping.
Thank you, Dominic.
But also it's also simply just replying to Dominic is because I think this is the second time you say something about certain professions, whether they're needed or is it people just kind of suck at doing that. But the truth is we can only, how do I say, specialize in so many things before we get overwhelmed. Like I would love it if I could live in a reality where I'm a doctor, lawyer, engineer, pilot, scuba diving instructor all at the same time. But that's just not likely, at least not in one lifetime.
Yeah, I'm not diminishing the craft. I'm questioning it's like doing a business plan. You have to reflect on it. You got to be observing and say, okay, so how is this going to look like when we have too many of this? Because we pay for our entertainment. This is why the athletes or people that do opera and all that, they get paid a lot. But meanwhile, the people that actually supplement it with our needs, they don't get paid as much, or there's a lot of restriction on it. And why is it that we have to rely only on the few to entertain us, let alone supply our needs? So where's our responsibility? So when we talk about moralities, we've gone so astray of we're trying to justify our decisions or lack of them. So in this particular case, I'm just saying, guy goes to university for 1 degree. The English language alone, Peter, has 5 degrees built in it. Forget about the fact that it actually has 5 other languages incorporated within that language. And if you follow all the different empires, you realize that's why they use that language. No different philosophy. If you're going to philosophize, you better learn how to speak Greek if you really want to use a comprehension language. Once again, that's the limitation. Now, am I saying right or wrong? Does it really matter? It's about going within and say, okay, well, that's interesting that he had said that. I wonder why he said that. Then you go inwards. This is why we have concept of prayer, inquiry, peace, silence, meditation, listen. Because unless you can prove to yourself, forget about me, prove to yourself who runs your body when you've been here for the last 2.5 hours. Where do you go when you go to sleep? Who functions you when you go to sleep? That's a mind fuck for the ego, because the ego doesn't know its place. It's an ongoing program. The fact that I'm using this language, that's my ego speaking. I got to use a language. Why don't I learn many other languages? I do know many other languages. I know a number. Go ahead.
Wow, that's something to think about. The languages that we use, they are limiting, and yet it's like the only way we can overcome our loneliness.
Even that, Jaro, state of aloneness, that's your being. Loneliness is your feelings. So most people can feel alone among a whole bunch of people. But if you're truly alone, then you've never connected with who you are. And that's fine. And everybody are going to have, I'm generalizing now at that point, to a point I'm even trying to arrogantly think it's a blanket statement.
Could you repeat that about aloneness?
Aloneness is a state of being. So now, and loneliness is your feelings. So people can feel lonely because it's always about them. It's like when I hear people talk about, well, my parents or my friends or my wife or my husband, they don't give me enough attention. Well, then be the example. Stop being such a child. And most people don't realize the reason why you're still children, because you're still caught up in your feelings. Develop them. Realize, okay, well, then if I'm not getting the attention, then I'll be the attention giver, to be the example. Now, most people don't do that because we've been so fucking hand-fed and hand-spooned. And then we use justifications. And that's fine. As long as you're honest with the self. Forget about me. I'm nobody in the equation to other people. I try not to make it personal because the world is bigger. It's way bigger than me. But when it comes down to me, personal with me only, I could share with other people. But it's not fucking debatable. They can try. I said, you're better off debating and masturbating alone. My view is not debatable. You can share what you get from it, but I still got to live it. This is where the conditioning of the schooling system has fucking failed everybody miserably. And they're only going to know that if they start questioning it. Now, if they look at, oh, I've earned a lot of money from it, I said, and who created that system?
I think the education system has failed us because we have failed it.
Well, you said
because we demand that it prepare us for a high-paying job, and then when we take courses that don't seem to relate to the career field, we complain and say, why do we have to take this course? Why do we have to take it? I don't see the need for it, like say a math course, or say a philosophy course, or a logic course, or a strange language course, like say Latin or Greek or French or German or Spanish, or when you read about the biographies of all these great scientists and thinkers, you see that, oh, they took Latin. They had, like, in their career, they had to master Latin and master Greek and this and that, and they became experts in this and that, and they end up becoming great scientists that discover this and that, and say, wow, they didn't go to a college, to a university, to learn computer science or chemistry or physics. All they did in college was learn to think. Maybe by learning how to think in Latin and in Greek and in Hebrew, then they became great thinkers and they could explore whatever they wanted.
Gerald, if you were listening from within, I never once said the word educate. See, this is where we project. I use the word quite clearly, schooling. Schooling means to put in. So now, if people were truly educating, bringing out, they realized the system could not cater to everybody. You can't pump out a whole bunch of teachers that are gifted to be astrologers. So what ends up happening is, it's like putting in a program in a computer to get the output. You already know what you want to do. You just want to mainstream it. But unfortunately, a lot of people have natural gifts that a schooling system could not possibly cater to them. This is why people have to have like more of a one-to-one kind of a deal. This is where the teacher student, if you go inwards, it's not like the outside world where you have one student, you have 30 students and one teacher. The guy that's teaching or the woman that's teaching has to be their own student. The rest of the people are just there to hear them because they're getting graded on marks, some symbol.
You know what this is? You know, Dominic, I don't know if you ever heard about this saying, is that the problem with grading system is that innovation cannot be graded.
Yes.
Innovation cannot be graded is because, first of all, you need to have a new grading system, which will never happen because A, how the hell do you do it? B, how the hell do you do that? So it's not going to happen. And C, here's the lesser expected reason from people. If you are someone who is more innovative, do you know what's really surprisingly dangerous about this is, imagine a professor or a teacher actually went out of his or her way to quote unquote create this grading system for innovation, which how the hell ever you do it, but let's say they come up with it. And then for some reason, they're so against your innovation of something that they're just going to think that your innovation is wrong. But that in itself makes no fucking sense, because
I'm with you,
how's
Peter.
innovation wrong, right? So what I'm saying is this cannot work on so many levels. And what am I getting at? My point I'm getting at, and of course, these are not the majority, these are the minority, but it proves your point, Dominic, is, you know, a lot of college dropout, like, you know, the founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, drop out of Harvard, created Facebook. You know, people like this, I don't want to say they're too stupid for university, but in fact, I would say they're probably too smart for the university in the sense that they are very innovative people. And when they look at the standard curriculum that they're taking, that they're just, I don't know how to say this, but I feel like these people can feel themselves being stifled by this standard curriculum system. And they just want to drop out and do something truly innovative. And, you know, very few times it actually grows to a world, you know, large global empire like the Facebook, Amazon companies. But it doesn't have to be like this to be successful, of course, because, you know, obviously you don't have to become the next Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk to be successful. That was just ridiculous comparison. But, you know, I see some people actually quit, and I'm not saying, and look, I'm not suggesting people to tell people, hey, tell your kids to quit school because What? To quit school and then do what? That's the most important thing. You can't just tell people to let their kids quit school and then just like, okay, do nothing, because that's how they start doing drugs and become a bad person. But what I'm saying is there are also a lot of people who quit high school, let alone college or graduate school. And I actually have a neighbor. He graduated with literally a part-time middle school level education, which you might be thinking, well, this guy, most people would think, oh, this guy is probably messed up. He's probably in jail, or he's probably going to suffer for the rest of his life because he didn't even go to high school. Well, no, he's a multimillionaire because he owns his 2 companies. So, unfortunately, you're sure these people might not be very common, but they do exist, and they definitely are suffering from the educational system.
Well, again, Pete, I heard you. What happens is when you have old kingdoms of empires, you have the few that are wise. The one that says, I was talking to God in the kingdom. The problem and the issue, if there is an issue, is the masses are still not attuned. So what happens is, it doesn't matter. We're going to find out in history, guys like Musk and Zuckerberg were just CEOs of a corporation that a lot of it was fueled by science and military stuff. That's why they spend trillions of dollars a year. But once again, the technology is always going to be created or invented or produced probably by the masses, but it's the responsibility of everybody to at least get on board by questioning from within and say, oh yeah, you deserve to be our king. Why? Because we went inwards and something inside says you're worthy enough to lead me when I choose not to lead myself for a bit. So now a lot of people today aren't able to become educate, bring out. So now a guy like Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, and all that kind of stuff, they were giving us very simple technology. We're astonished by it because we've ignored the technology that we're in, high tech as that may be. Now, there is a lot of manipulation going on there, such as our foods, and eventually they're going to do it even to our species. But then again, we've been manipulated already quite a few times. So in this particular case, if you know that there's somebody in your clan that's wise, then you have to find the next generation that are going to be apprentices. But our schooling system, what it teaches, and I make sure I clarify, educating and schooling are 2 different things going on. Most of us have been schooled. That's kind of a form of conditioning or brainwashing, where you go and you learn certain things, but you find out, but that's not your role in this lifespan. But for a lot of people, they struggle with that. Yeah, but and then you said it, you put another symbol on top of it, which is numbers. He made $1 million. He made $1 million or he earned $1 million. I catch my friends all the time. I said, unless you're printing the stuff in your basement, that's a different game I wouldn't mind being amused by. But now if you're earning it, who are you earning it from? You're exchanging your energy for something that's valueless, which is currency. In this case, fiat currency. Now, you have to condition a whole bunch of people. The whole purpose of fiat currency wasn't just for IOUs. It was to actually convenience. Me and Peter, usually as an example, Peter, we can't go to Starbucks with a gold nugget and say, well, something, Peter bought his torch today, so we can disassemble a little bit of gold so we can exchange all that kind of stuff. No. We can't do that. And even that, gold was always used. And the Egyptians, the few understood it. That's why you see certain pictures of people in certain position, because they understood conduit with silver. Same with with gold, same with silver. This is why in the story of Jesus, if it was 30 pence of silver sold in exchange for his betrayal, it tells you where their economy was at the time. That's why it's silver. Right now, we're devaluing a currency in America. One time, 2005, 9 cents to the dollar. That's why they added the 2008 bailout, because the American currency is already dead. Now, if your sole reason why you're chasing a craft is based on certain symbols, A, B, C's, or D's, or 6 figures, you're no longer being of service to humanity. You're feeding the ego, and that's fine. So now when we're talking about morality, tie it up with that, then you're talking about your morality. And this is where people.
Well, but you can do it both at the same time. You can service humanity and also get something in return, right? Because I'll put it this way, Dominic. It's not my fault that I live in a society which requires money to stay alive. I would rather that we don't need anything to stay alive.
So that's the lazy man's way out.
I just want to stay alive.
Peter, that's a lazy man's way out. I never said about fault. I'm talking about taking accountability to question it for yourself. Peter, you're spinning in a circle here, my friend. And I can't even call you my friend. I wish you were my enemy. At least it would be more challenging. That's an excuse. I know I'm making my excuses. Now, if you try to understand what fiat currency is or isn't, we live in a system where it's all currency, energy. Tesla was just ever so lightly tapping on that kind of stuff, and they use a gauge such as numbers to gauge it. Why, you think we're just living in a world of 432 and 440, let alone understand what each of those numbers represent? Those are excuses, and you're trying to justify your excuses, which is fine, but that's better done publicly, privately with yourself. Outside of that, what, you're going to write another book, have another dogma? We already have enough dogmas in this realm, and even them, they're all in chaos right now. Why? Because for them to put in a new system, they have to have a little chaos along the way. They're just want to finding out the pulse of the humanity. They're all wearing masks, or at least most of them are wearing masks. The rest of them are protesting. They're in the same game. I know I'm in the game, and I see that some of the rules are changing, and morality is just one of them. But then again, who conditioned us? Who conditioned the language in us? Now, if you don't want to have that, then I question, then you really didn't learn philosophy. You got a degree in it, but you didn't learn it. Which is fine. But are you prepared to challenge yourself, or are you going to defend yourself because you think I've said some words in a very harsh way? It's an entertainment for me, and I hope I'm entertaining other people. Same when my buddy said, "Dami, you're amusing me." I said, "I hope we're exchanging fairly. Am I amusing you too?" A lot of things that we say, Pete, are excuses. And then we use from excuses to justifications. That's cleverness on my part. Now you might think, "Oh, Dom, you're not talking about it." It's not me that you should be talking to. It'd be you, whoever you think you are or aren't.
The way I look at it is this. When people ask me, Peter, do you think that we are all free will, or do you think we're also products of our nature? And I think it's a bit of both. And the reason I say that is because, and why do I say this? Because I don't think it's exclusively one way or the other, right? But because to say if we're 100% free will, okay, where does that come from? Because we're all interconnected to everything in the universe. But to say that we are completely product of our environment to the point that there's no free will, that's also BS, because I decided to come on this meeting myself. It's not like I have no free will to come here, but what I'm trying to say is when it comes to, and I guess I'm kind of indirectly addressing, in an indirect way, addressing what you were saying about excuses, and what I'm about to say, you can definitely, it's definitely, you can easily take it as an excuse, but for me, I think it's a legitimate point and not an excuse. But when people ask me, Peter, do you think when a criminal is made, and the reason why I use the word made is because is it possible? Yes, but it's very unlikely for a person to be born and be like, this person is destined to be the next Hitler. This is very, very, very low chance. Even if you're mentally messed up, you're genetically messed up, you're not likely to become the next Hitler, okay, or the next Elon Musk. But what I'm trying to say is, it depends on a lot of things, right? There is the good old nature, nurture, and the interaction between the two, but also, how you choose your morals and, stuff like this. And when people ask me, like, well, when someone commits a crime, a horrific crime, minor crime, it doesn't matter. That the circumstances, the context is the person commits a crime. Now, are we going to say this person is 100% at fault? I am going to take a very strange stance and say yes and no. I would say mostly, probably like the overwhelming majority is this person's fault because you chose to do it, right? Like, unless someone pointed a gun at you and be like, do this crime or else your family dies, that's a different situation. Unless you're okay with your family dying. But let's say you do this crime on your own, okay? You did it. But when people ask me the hard question, do you think society also had a role in this person's life for him to be at this, for him to come to this point in his life? And I say, yes, absolutely. And they go, well, Peter, that sounds like an excuse to commit crimes. I said, no, because I'm tired of telling myself that we are so free-willed that nothing around us is affecting us in any way. So I hope this makes sense. I see this as almost like a 90%, 10% split, or maybe 95% split between self-accountability and how our nature surroundings has, quote unquote, made us, if you will.
That's good thinking. And I would add that for for the person, it seems like it's encouraged for them, in order to improve themselves, to have faith in that they have enough free will and enough uh, self-discipline to improve themselves, to get out of whatever bad habit they are. So in a way, whatever self-help one does, one kind of has to have faith in some amount of free will, or some amount of ability to control one's mind.
Well, part of it, Jaro, we've been conditioned already. The concept of free will, free is just one aspect of many. Most people might get a cognitive dissonance, and then they might be able to entertain two different ideals at once. There's many ideals. So now will can be receptive, it could be clever, it could be associated. There's many variations of the will. So now, as Peter used the example, if somebody commits a crime, first of all, I would never condemn a person, even though I do it sloppily. Sometimes I say, well, you did something bad. No, you're acting bad. That's why we have many words with the word act in it. And this is why we're in the world called the illusion. In a play, you need many actors and actresses. You have actions, you have practical, you have fact. There's a reason for those words. You got to go energetically to pick up those things. You go inwards. So now, when a person says, society, does society play a role in that person? Yes, if society has agreed naively or participated in making rules, yes, they have participated in it. But if you're going to participate in the rule making, you should participate in the grooming part. Now, most people are going to say, well, but I'm not responsible. I said, okay, well, then you're sending your kids aimlessly to what? To be babysitted at a schooling system? This is why when I tell people the whole concept of half glass, half full, half empty is a child's game, because an aware child will say, can I talk about the table? Sure you can. Can I talk about the painting I see behind the table? Sure you can. Can I talk about the fact that I want to know what's inside the glass? Sure you can. What happened if I told you I don't even see the word I'm speaking? I said, sure you can. See how we go from duality to many versions of it. But most people don't want to entertain that because they've been programmed to see only duality and then split it. Even the concept of yin and yang, what is that? You know, what is the feminine and masculine, positive and negative? That's polarities. Now, if you want to play polarity, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, spiritual and material, that's fine. But if you want to actually have some concept of, excuse me, wisdom and understanding, you're going to have to seek from within, because it's not shown in the outside world. Now, as Peter's using the example of a crime being made, let's spin it the other way. Other people will be more receptive, because people usually want to be sold, whether they know it or not, pleasantries. Well, I just saw somebody deliver a child and another person basically cared for my kid. Well, now that person's picking up the energy of love. Now, somebody else said, but I love my own kid. I said, no, you're not doing love. You're doing obligation and duty. See, love is unconditional. The energy is. But how do you have unconditional in a conditioned realm?
So Dominic, can I give you actually, I don't know why I didn't do this the first round when I said this, and if Jaro can hear this, I think this is going to be a even more clear point to what I was saying. So, I was talking about the person committing crime, how much blame should this person get? Ideally, maybe 95% the person, because obviously, someone else robbed a bank, they can't say, well, Peter robbed the bank. That's just not going to work. But so the person did it on his own volition, free will, but there's also some upbringing, society involved in this. And to put this even in a much more clear sense, understanding example, I'll put it this way. It's called committing a crime out of, okay, so in the eyes of the law, committing a crime is committing a crime. They don't really give a shit like why you committed a crime, right? Your motivation, that's just because you can't say, well, Your Honor, I really needed the food, so I stole it. So therefore let me go, right? So essentially what I'm saying is, imagine someone commits a crime out of desperation, which happens all the time. And then you have a criminal record. And then now you're released, right? Because you're bailed out or you're out of prison, whatever. That doesn't really matter. Okay, now here's the unique thing that I want to talk about. It's called living in a society that actually self-perpetuate a high recidivism rate, meaning that if you have a criminal record, and the more severe the criminal record, the more criminal record you have, I'll see you later, Don, then of course, you will be looked upon differently compared to someone who doesn't have a criminal record. Meaning that imagine I stole a piece of bread or, something like this, got me a record. And then now in the future, every single job that I'm going to look for legally, because you can work illegally as well, legally, then and assuming they do background checks on you, they will see that you were a thief. And that's going to be staying with you for the rest of your life unless you find a way to cancel that from your permanent record, meaning that it's going to put you in a place where already at a disadvantage because you did something really bad, okay, in the past, you commit a crime. And now let's say you can't find a job now because no one's going to hire a thief, no one's going to hire, let's say, a rapist who came out of prison after 30 years. And so what do? Well, there are only several things you can do, right? It's hard to imagine yourself in the situation, but try your best, right? After 30 plus years in prison with no skills, except for probably getting beat up by people, and then now no one's going to hire you. You have three choices. You can always starve to death, which is pretty miserable, but that's a choice. 2, you can try to find a job legally, which probably no one's going to hire you unless you get really lucky. Or 3, it's called doing illegal things to get by. But unfortunately, if you get caught, you're back to square one. You see what I'm saying? So this is a great mix between how a person's decision making can be greatly affected by its environment and later perpetuating a downward spiral.
Okay, so Pete, inquiry would be who makes the rule that's legal, and once you find out who makes the rule that's legal, then you'll see what's the absence of legal, and then we use words and we perpetuate by saying it's illegal. If a person commits a crime based on their standards and all that, and they no longer can get we'll say a legal version of it, there's a lot of companies out there, not companies, groups out there, gangs that will hire you gladly. Now, when we look at how people like Zuckerberg and all these people, there's a good chance those guys don't even have a dime to their name. We just hear it in the media. Now, if a person says, well, that's wrong, I said, now you're playing a game with yourself. What do you mean? If you understand how the rules are played in their game, it's like when people say there's elites and they believe in satanic stuff, and a person says, well, I don't believe in that. I said, that's where you erred. What do you mean? You're erroneously missing the idea. If you're going to be ruled by them, you should at least understand their rules and what they play with. This is why when people say, I want to be a millionaire, I said, don't you want to be a billionaire? Don't you want to be a trillionaire? Do you want to be one of those kind of people that they think money is actually dirty? There's people out there, Peter, that are so rich, they don't even play with money because they understand land. This is why we have rulers. Now, when somebody says they're a landlord, I tell my buddies all the time, I said, you're not a landlord. You're in a housing business. What do you mean? I said, unless you have a title, you're a duke or a baron, that's one thing. Now, some people would say, well, I own a big high rise in New York. I said, do you have another kind of title? What do you mean? A allodial title. That means you don't have to pay taxes. See, this is where when people play the game of morality without understanding all the different variations of rules, then when you quickly jump to say, well, that's right or wrong. Well, who made the rules? I'm trying to understand the rules. So a lot of times for those people, I'm just trying to say, who made the rules? Because they're not ready to understand the rules. So in this particular case, a guy commits a crime. Who determines if it's right or wrong? Now, somebody could turn around and say, well, intuitively, I know that I would never want to harm another person, let alone them harm me. So then you're going to try to avoid those situations as best as you can. That's why some people intuitively say, today I'm not going down that dark alley. And another time, I need to go down that dark alley because there's a guy down there or a woman down there that needs my help. We don't leave that. We always lead with only one hemisphere. This is the half full, half empty mentality, opposed to work together because you have other receivers within yourself. That's why women are not blessed, but more or less it's a curse. They have many receivers near the midsection. And because most of them have the potential of being childbearers, that's okay. Why do most men commit crimes? Are they really committing a crime? It's a matter of questioning things. A wise person would say, okay, so you want me to tell you that I'm going to make a decision saying that this person stole food. I said, but what happened if I find out the person that was harboring all the food or hoarding all the food, then maybe he or she made the crime first. This is where people, I'm even hearing out of you, Peter, you're doing a lot of reaction. The ability to respond is different than reacting. So now you're trying to fit in something, which is a good opportunity to fit it in as an example. But if you're going to be with a character like me, where I'm going to throw a whole bunch of different possibilities because I'm not looking for the answer. Now, the answer, that's a condition. That's the whole idea of right and wrong. I just say change the word to wrong to left. It's a direction now. So what direction are we going? Are we saying that a person that has to steal certain things, like, when people have situations you see, they depict it on shows or whatever, where everybody's stealing a TV, but meanwhile, there's no hydro in the place. So that just tells me a lot about them. They're reacting. Yeah, but I might need it later on. If you were a speculator and you bought a whole bunch of food or cow meat or whatever, and you hoarded for the last 10 years, and now it's gone up in value, because it really hasn't gone up in value. The only reason why gold never changed is because the currency is so useless. Even in Canada here, I tell my buddies all the time, the reason why gas and all that, because most of our stuff are held by outside corporations. And for them to come here to say two things are going to happen. Either you devalue your currency like we did in Venezuela, Argentina, and also what they did in the ruples and all that kind of stuff. But most people are so self-absorbed. So when you talk about morality, you're talking from your point of view. And so am I, but I can hypothetically say, well, how is it to be Indian? And I have to be born to an older man and I'm younger. Those are conditionings. And in their rules, they believe in class system, even though we have our own class systems here too. Rich class, poor class, working class. This is the example I give my buddies all the time. I said, you're the frog that's in the water from birth and you don't even know it's warm, which is fine. And we can throw all kinds of, not excuses, but justifications. See, what you had shared earlier, you went from excuses to justification now. I need to earn money. I need to do this. You might not have said those words, but that's what most people say. And given the opportunity, put them in that situation, you'll find out who they really are or aren't. Now, I don't wish that upon anybody. I don't want to see a whole bunch of people being in a war savage country and then really have to do things and say, well, who makes the laws now? Like here, we don't realize here, when they were doing all those things the last 10 or 15 years in the Boston Marathon, all that, because they were passing martial laws. And in martial laws, the way the United Nations works is a nation cannot military their own people. So you would have to have a foreign nation monitor over America or Canada and all that kind of stuff. And who makes those rules? Did we have a say in all of that? So now I'm speeding, don't realize that there's it's changing from 80 kilometers down to 60 kilometers. Police officer pulls me over. He has to give me a ticket. I give him the excuse, well, I didn't know. Still got to give you a ticket. So whether or not people are aware of morality, it still exists. Now, play these hypothetical situations, or even real, Peter, sounds like, that if you commit a crime, that am I being outcasted? Well, sometimes that's a bonus. I'm going to be thrown out of the system. That's great. Why? Because most of the people that are well off that you've described, they're not going to the schooling system unless they went to private schooling system. And history will show eventually these guys went to schooling systems that were private schooling systems, but they learned about entrepreneurship. They learned about psychology, philosophy. They understood all that. They became more well-developed. What they did to Bill Gates in the last 10 years when they were in courts, they were making sure that when they start throwing everything at them, they're going to say, you can't be prosecuted for it. So it's business as usual. As I always say to my buddies, depends on where you're standing. If you're looking at somebody that's a billionaire and he's committed a whole bunch of things that have affected people to not be as one, it's business as usual for them. Billionaires are middle class, Peter. Trillionaires are just the next puppets. But we all participate in all that by saying things. I need money. No, you don't need money. What is this, Gilligan Island? You think for some reason, after a couple of days, it would be burning all that. Why? Because unless we're going to have the idea that we're going to be rescued, and I put so much value on that piece of paper opposed to the person that's standing beside me, then how can I have a moral inquiry? How would a guy like Socrates talk, or Jesus say, fellow beings, the ship yap, are you okay with me ripping a hole in you? Because that's what I do to myself on a regular basis. Now, they might take it personal. I said, then you're not developed. And that's me guessing at that point. And that is my ego, by the way.
Hey, I was going to say it's great speaking with you probably for the first time, but I'm going to get going. So, I don't know if this goes every day or every week, but I hope I can come back again. Yeah.
You'll know. If you choose to come, you'll come. But it is. Gerald tries it every Saturday.
Every Saturday. Okay, it's good to know. Because sometimes I don't know the schedules. So sometimes the host will host a meeting, exciting one, and people are wondering when the next one comes, and it never comes. So it's like some organizers literally make their first meeting their last. So that's just, that's bad. Okay, well, I'm gonna get going. So assuming you live in North America continent, have a good morning then. See ya.
Hmm. Did you do some research, Jaro, on the aloneness versus loneliness? If you're there.
Oh, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Oh, I had to turn off the audio to not disturb others because I'm in a kind of a library.
Hmm. I hope your mother gets better, Jaro.
Hmm. So, how did you enjoy today's conversation?
Well, this, for me, Jaro, this perpetuates my frustration, but I'm okay with
Oh.
it.
Yes. Well, I hope you don't feel lonely.
No, lonely I do. No, that's part of my frustration. Alone,
But,
I'm never going to be alone, but loneliness, yes.
Maybe your consolation is you can go within and become aloneness.
Could be. It could be. Well, Jaro, when I discovered that I'm never alone, a lot of times,
Oh,
this is where people can do
that's true.
or being a hermit or isolation. They don't need, but I'm one of those creatures. I do like interaction, but I realize I'm also my double-edged sword, where sometimes I realize I'm trying to push something a little bit prematurely, where I think even Dawn had mentioned it. Once you come to your own awareness, as long as you're at peace, I don't think she said it in those words, but I'm in between being good with, being comfortable with myself, but yet wanting to debate myself. And I try not to debate with other people, but I get it. This is the whole forum of getting together. It's like some people watch TV and watch a sporting event of some sort or some scary movie and will interact with it. They go, hey, don't go behind that door. There's a villain there. They're allowed to do that if they want to. And then there's other people, they just like to watch the movie. Is it really their responsibility to tell somebody else to keep quiet? If you're in a movie theater, there is most people are quiet, so then you go with the pack. But if not, then you have to remove yourself, whether the person that's making the noise or yourself. So
I have to remove myself so that I can do what I have to do.
Mhm.
Thank you very much
Ciao,
for
ciao.
joining us and
Enjoy your yoga next week.
making us think deeper.
Hopefully. Hopefully, Jaro. I don't know if we're ever doing that. It's not really our responsibility. Hopefully, I do watch your videos. I do rewatch YouTube because I do that with a lot of videos where a lot of people, they don't care about that. They don't want to re-examine what was spoken. Think about people that do mantras. Do you do it once or do you have to keep doing it over and over again? And sometimes when you do mantras, if you do it in the presence of other people doing mantra, it becomes more harmonics. You know what I mean? Like think about when you do music, Jaro, would you just sing, if you were doing karaoke, would you do karaoke or you doing the singing and in the background, you actually have to do the music too. Sometimes you have to do a collaboration of things, so I think you got a whole bunch of good people. I think what happens is that's my issue, where when somebody comes late, that pleasantry stuff, where you from, how's the weather, that should be done at the beginning. And if you come later on, then follow the conversation. You know what I mean? Because that's not, if me and you, Jaro, are having a really interesting conversation, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and then all of a sudden they want to talk about, oh, my week was nice and all that. I said, this is being recorded. Come sooner next time. Because then you're rewarding lateness by giving them that attention. No offense to Joel, but I'm kind of tired of talking about Da Vinci or hearing about Da Vinci. If he's come in here, because I know Joel's a very wise guy, if he comes here to talk about whatever the topic is, so be it. If not, then the responsibility will be for me to remove myself. And I don't want to, because I realize there's always an opportunity. You might have something to say. Don might have something to say. Jorge might have something to say. Peter, I was just talking to Louise yesterday on text. We were just chit-chatting for a little bit, but I don't think he's interested in coming back. He's doing his own thing. So, but if he does, up to him. Same with Rami. Same with Mike.
Mm.
Maybe I'm the issue. Maybe they do come here for just for Saturday morning, just talk about how the weather is, how was your day. Well, then it's not really about Buddhism or philosophy. Then I don't know if that's even what you're talking about. I think it was Buddhism that your group's about, isn't it, Jaro?
Or
Mhm.
or
Or
the small talk that that Joe interrupts with is a way to to get a feel for the others and l- learn a little bit about the others, the new person.
well, Jaro, next time me and you are playing tennis, if we ever playing tennis and we're into our second set and we're really getting great, all of a sudden a total stranger show up. Can I warm up with you guys? Sorry, no, we're already in a game.
Mm.
It's the same ideal, Jaro. You know, I get it. If Joel wants to chit chat, he could do it on text. Because I know Joel's a smart
But
guy, and
but
go ahead.
he eventually gets into it.
Because I had to step in.
For him to get what's going on and for others to get him.
Jaro, I had to put an effort and I had to be almost rude about bringing it back to the moral conversation. It would have continued talking about where you're from, how's the weather. I was trying to be discreet when I said it's warm inside. You know, we were in a topic. It'd be different if it was at the beginning of the conversation, 7 to 7:30. But when it's late, well, you know, because the conversation was getting to a certain point. I get where Peter was coming from. It was a lot of personal conversation. He was just beating around the bush. Where Don was talking very general, which is good. And same with Jorge. Same with you. Your situation was a little bit different today because you had to wear a mask, you had to be with your mom, and you were driving and all that. So your situation is different. But again, Jaro, that's my 2 cents. It's your platform. You could do whatever you want.
Okay, so thank you.
Enjoy,
for
Jaro.
trying to get us back on track.
No, I was trying to stay with the
so
topic.
until next time, well,
Enjoy.
we'll continue this conversation somehow.
Enjoy, my friend. Ciao, Jaro.
Good